Chapter 757, Taming the Boss Spirit Euphoria? The Spirit Emporium has acknowledged him as its master. What in the world happened? How did that fellow do it? The crowd trapped in the room were shocked speechless. At this moment, they finally realized the queerness of the young man before them. With just a few pats here and there, all of the artifacts acknowledged him as their master. With just a few steps, even the Spirit Emporium submitted to him. Was there anything in the world he couldn't tame? It was no wonder the boss of the Spirit Emporium was so furious. If they were to see their own possessions being claimed by others in such a manner, they would have gone on a rampage as well. Young master. Sun Qiong's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. He'd thought that when the young master said that he would cause trouble, he would only force the other party to compensate for the assault. But from the looks of it, that wasn't just it. He was planning to overturn the other party's entirety. This was too vicious. Even though the old master was also rather extreme as well, he would at least hold back considering his position as a master teacher. On the other hand, it was as if the young master was completely out of control. However, no matter what, the other party was a saint. He might be able to hold back for a moment in consideration of the young master's standing as a master teacher, but under such relentless provocation, his tolerance would swiftly wear thin. By then, there would be no one but the old master who could save them. I want you dead. As if Sun Qiong's worst fears had come to be, the boss of the Spirit Emporium roared furiously, and raising his palm, the formidable might of a Saint Realm expert came crashing toward his young master. Young master. Alarmed, Sun Qiong was just about to rush up to take the blow for the young master when the latter abruptly raised his palm. Barrier. With those words, dozens of artifacts flew up and stood in front of Zhongxian, protecting him from the blow. At the same time, the ground rumbled as the whirring of mechanisms echoed in the air. Several towering walls rose from the ground, sealing both Zhongxian and the boss within it. Young master. Seeing that Zhongxian was locked together with a rampaging Saint Realm expert in a narrow space, Sun Qiong immediately rushed forward anxiously. To his shock, however, he realized that the walls blocking him were made of an incredibly resilient material which he couldn't break with his current strength. How could I have allowed this happen? If a mishap befalls the young master, how can I ever face the old master? Sun Qiong cried as he punched the walls desperately. Before meeting the old master, he had been nothing more than a humble merchant, destined to spend his entire life in a daze in Tianxian Kingdom, never venturing out to see the wider world beyond. It was the old master who brought him out from the well he was in, granting his great responsibility despite his humble birth, and helped to raise his cultivation. The old master had entrusted the young master to his care. If something were to happen to the young master, he would be a sinner. Young master, nothing can happen to you. With a trembling body, Sun Qiong fumbled around the wall, attempting to find any point of weaknesses on the wall which he could exploit. However, the wall was built of materials far beyond his current strength. No matter how hard he tried, he was powerless before it. Peng 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 peng. At that moment, the sound of fists and legs sinking into flesh echoed from within the walls. The young master is getting beaten up. Those sounds sent Sun Qiong into utter panic. His eyes reddened in anxiety, and his heart pounded in apprehension. No, I must save the young master, even at the cost of my life. He didn't know what else he could at the moment, so he could only try ramming at the wall with his body. However, at that moment, a scream of agony sounded. Ah! Stop hitting me. I admit that I'm at fault. I beg you to let me off. Hearing that voice, the fidgety Sun Qiong suddenly froze on the spot. That voice didn't come from the young master but the boss of the Spirit Emporium. The boss was begging for mercy. Could it be that the young master was pummeling the Saint Realm boss within the walls? Flabbergasted, Sun Qiong stared at the walls before him with his mouth agape. Returning back to the time when the boss of the Spirit Emporium made a move on Zhongxian. Zhongxian knew that even with the artifacts protecting him, he wouldn't last long against the boss. Thus, he immediately activated the mechanism of the Spirit Emporium and summoned the walls beneath the ground to seclude themselves from the world outside. This way, he would be able to do anything he wished without worrying about prying eyes. Hoo hoo hoo. As soon as those walls were in place, Zhongxian flicked his wrist and whipped out a book and 20 otherworldly demon puppets. Get him, Zhongxian ordered. With the experience from pummeling the Byzantium Alios beast, those puppets rushed at the boss and began beating him viciously from head to toe. All along, the boss had thought that he was only dealing with a Cosmos Bridge realm lad, so there was nothing for him to worry about. Who would have thought the other party would suddenly summon so many Saint Realm experts? Before he could even process what was going on, heavy blows were raining down him, leaving him with heavy bruises and swelling everywhere. After enduring the heavy beatings for a few moments, he finally found an opening for him to escape. But just as he was about to move, an overwhelming killing intent crushed down on him, rendering him immobile. As such, he could only continue to suffer the beating. His current cultivation was only at Saint Realm primary stage, a far way off from matching up to the Byzantium Alios beast. Given how even the latter was done in, how could he possibly withstand the onslaught of the otherworldly demon puppets? In just a few moments, he was already utterly subdued. While the Spirit Emporium was important, how could it compare to his life? Considering that the other party could retain his composure before his wrath, it was likely that he wasn't some kind soul either. If he didn't beg for mercy, chances were that the other party might just watch nonchalantly as he was beaten to death. Left with no choice, he could only plead for his life. You want me to spare you? Offer your soul to me and acknowledge me as your master. Zhongxian replied indifferently to his pleading. Zhongxian did consider whether he should just kill the boss of the Spirit Emporium, but the death of a saint would likely result in a huge storm in the city. That could mean a great deal of trouble for him. However, he couldn't simply let the other party off either, especially after all that had happened. Thus, after some contemplation, he decided to force the other party into submission instead. As long as he could hold the other party's soul captive, he wouldn't need to worry about the other party divulging his secret. At the same time, he would gain a Saint Realm lackey as well, which would give him more room to deal with matters without resorting to the otherworldly demon puppets. The otherworldly demon puppets were his trump card, but they were a double-edged sword as well. Anything related to the otherworldly demonic tribe was sensitive, and he might be branded as a traitor of humanity if he were to be spotted with the puppets. Thus, it would be best for him to limit his usage of them. You want me to offer my soul to you? The boss was taken aback. In a sense, this was similar to the contract between a beast tamer and their tamed beast. However, establishing a contract between humans wasn't as simple a procedure. One had to have a profound understanding of souls in order to do so. Of all the occupations, the only one known to be capable of such a feat was the Soul Oracle. If that fellow was asking this of him, did it mean that he was a Soul Oracle? But hadn't that occupation gone extinct yet? Seeing the hesitation in the boss's eyes, Zhongxian impatiently commanded, "Continue beating him, do not stop until he's dead." Wait a moment. The boss of the Spirit Emporium waved his hands in a fluster as the puppets in the area marched ferociously toward him once more. As long as he could continue living, he wouldn't hesitate to acknowledge another man as his master. He had once committed banditry, and ironically, the experience ended up teaching him how valuable life was. Before it, dignity and pride were mere transient qualities. "I'll acknowledge you as my master," the boss said, knowing that it was either this or death. He severed a portion of his soul, and a powerful force abruptly pulled it into the glabella of the young man before him. As a Saint Realm expert, he had already gained a certain degree of control over his soul, allowing him to sever a portion of it easily. Formidable. As soon as that fragment of his soul seeped into the other party's glabella, he saw an immense soul reminiscent of a giant towering before it. The boss's face paled in fright. He was a Saint Realm expert, but the other party's soul was innumerable times larger and stronger than his. In terms of the strength of their souls, he was no match for the young man before him at all. It was as if pitting an undeveloped child against a behemoth. Could it be that he is really a soul oracle? But even soul oracles wouldn't have such a powerful soul. The boss's body trembled in astonishment. Even though he had never met a soul oracle before, he had once read a few records on them. While soul oracles did specialize in soul cultivation, it wasn't to such an exaggerated extent. The soul he was seeing before him shattered what he had thought to be possible for a soul. Just how in the world did the other party cultivate his soul? And where did this freak come from? Who? While the boss was immersed in his shock, the fragment of his soul was fused into the other party's soul. With this, as long as the young man before him willed it, he would die instantaneously. Not daring to show the slightest disrespect for the young man, he hurriedly clasped his fist and bowed respectfully. Master. Good, call me young master. Zhongxian nodded. After the affair with Mo Hunsheng, Zhongxian had some experience with establishing a contract with other humans, so it went much smoother this time. Yes, young master, the boss replied politely. Knowing that the other party was no longer able to stand against him, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. He returned Vicious and the other otherworldly demon puppets into his ring before turning to the boss and asking, "What is your name?" Since the other party was his subordinate now, he should at least know the other party's name. After all, he couldn't possibly keep addressing the other party as boss. "I am Wei Changfeng, the boss replied. "Braving through the wind and waves. You have a good name." "All right, I'll call you Little Feng too then." Zhongxian nodded. "Yes." Wei Changfeng nodded hurriedly. "Keep everything that has happened in here a secret. Not a soul is to learn of it," Zhongxian instructed. "Don't worry, young master. I won't speak a word of it to anyone," Wei Changfeng replied. For a Cosmos Bridge Realm cultivator to command 20 Saint Realm puppets, no one would believe his words even if he were to divulge it. After ensuring that the other party wouldn't divulge the matter, Zhongxian nodded in satisfaction. Following which, he asked, "Do you know why I came to your Spirit Emporium to cause trouble?" "Forgive me for my ignorance, but I am unaware of the reason," Wei Changfeng replied with a sliver of doubt in his tone. "The reason is simple. Your Spirit Emporium, out of greed, attempted to lay its hands on my students and butler. These men are your subordinates, right?" With a casual grasp, the roof of the Spirit Emporium opened up, and the great violet-winged beast flew in and tossed 4 semi-dead fellows in. Upon seeing the faces of the 4 men, Wei Changfeng's face twitched as he replied, "Yes, I'll leave it to you to deal with them." Zhongxian waved his hands. "Also, I want you to clear whatever work you have the Spirit Emporium as soon as possible and come work for me. Don't worry, as long as you do well, I will guide you in your cultivation and bring you to greater heights." "Yes." Wei Changfeng nodded in response. As a servant, he could only take whatever his master said at face value. He didn't have the right to refuse the other party. In truth, he didn't really believe that Zhongxian would be able to raise his cultivation. After all, as a Cosmos Bridge Realm cultivator, how could the other party have the knowledge and experience to guide him, a Saint Realm cultivator, in his cultivation? That was a huge joke. "You don't believe me?" Seeing through Wei Changfeng's thoughts, Zhongxian smiled. "I dare not to." Wei Changfeng swiftly replied. "If I am not mistaken, the reason you started the Spirit Emporium and stole the artifacts of others is all to save a person, right?" Zhongxian asked impassively. How did you know?" Wei Changfeng's eyes widened in astonishment. Chapter 758. Returning to the academy when Wei Changfeng had executed a battle technique against him, Zhongxian had already compiled a book on him via the Library of Heaven's Path. Initially, he harbored great disdain for the other party for the vile deeds he had done, but after learning of the reason behind his actions, he couldn't help but feel a little pity for him. It wasn't that Wei Changfeng was a person with insatiable greed, but that he needed those to save a life. "Regardless of how I know, I can tell you this. As long as you serve me well, I will help you save her. Even if it is beyond my means, I will do my best to find someone who possesses the ability to do so," Zhongxian said. "Why you?" Wei Changfeng's body trembled. The other party was right. The reason he had opened the Spirit Emporium and gathered all kinds of artifacts in it despite risking making a lot of enemies was also to treat his severely ill daughter. His daughter's vitals had been wounded when she was still a fetus, resulting in her innate frailty from birth. He had sought many famous physicians, but there were none who could offer him a solution. In the end, it was a 6-star pinnacle physician who had given him a prescription and told him that he could lengthen the lifespan of his daughter by feeding her the spirit contained within artifacts. It was through this matter that his daughter had lasted the past few years. However, this only alleviated her condition temporarily, and its effectiveness was wearing thin. If a cure couldn't be found soon, she wouldn't have long to live. However, this issue was only known amongst the saints in Hongyuan City. How did he learn of it? If the young master can really save my daughter, I will do anything to repay the favor, even if it means braving through hell. Recalling the various incredible means of the young man before him, Wei Changfeng couldn't help but have his hopes lifted. He immediately kneeled to the floor and bowed. I don't need you to brave through hell for me. As long as you serve me well, you will be well rewarded, Zhongxian said as he took out a wine gourd and passed it over. Drink it. Yes. Even though Wei Changfeng was surprised by the abrupt gesture, he didn't dare to disobey the other party's words. Thus, he pried open the lid and gulped down the wine. Gu-gu-gu-gu. As the fine wine entered his body, he immediately felt a warm surge of energy flowing through his veins. At a pace visible to the eye, the injuries he had sustained from the puppets healed, and before long, he had already made a full recovery. This is Saint Recovery Medicine? Wei Changfeng narrowed his eyes. Despite being a Saint Realm expert and the head of the Spirit Emporium, he had never seen a Saint Recovery medicine with effects as pronounced as this. For his wounds to heal immediately after drinking it. Perhaps, the young master might just be able to save his daughter's life. Let's clear up this mess first, Zhongxian said. If he wanted to win the absolute loyalty of his subordinates, he would have to strike a balance between the carrot and stick. After forcing the other party in submission, it was only right to give him some benefits so as to give him some expectations for the future. Otherwise, even if Zhongxian held his soul hostage, if the other party's heart wasn't with him, that would be no different from carrying a ticking time bomb around with him. Yes. Knowing that it was impossible for the young master to save his daughter considering that he had yet to achieve anything for the other party, Wei Changfeng didn't pursue the matter. Jia. The mechanisms rumbled, the wall isolating the duo slowly vanished, and Sun Qiong and the others came into sight. Boss. The guards rushed forward anxiously, but upon seeing that Zhongxian was still alive and kicking, the guards encircled him and drew their weapons. Insolent. Wei Changfeng leaped in fright upon seeing that sight. From today onward, he shall be my young master, so you must address him as young master as well. You must treat him with even more respect with me, and anyone who defies this order will be killed. There will be no chances given. Young master. The guards were taken aback. Did the boss hit his head somewhere? The other party had just wreaked havoc in his territory, and he was ordering them to address the culprit as young master. But despite their bewilderment, they knew that the boss wasn't kidding given the grim expression on his face. Thus, they lowered their heads and clasped their fists, paying respect to the young master. The cultivators watching the spectacle from the side were stunned speechless. They'd thought that it was incredible of that young man to make all of those artifacts and even the Spirit Emporium acknowledge him as their master. But to think that he would even tame the Saint Realm boss of the Spirit Emporium. Could there be anything more exaggerated than this? Young master. Sun Qiong's lips twitched. He was still worried that some mishap would befall on the young master. But from the looks of it now, his worries were unfounded. To tame a Saint Realm cultivator despite being at Cosmos Bridge Realm, the young master was just a step away from shattering the atmosphere. As expected of the old master's student, he does have the old master's flair in him, Sun Qiong remarked in awe. After organizing the guards, Wei Changfeng turned to the crowd and clasped his fist. Everyone, I ask of you not to speak a word of what happened here today outside. You will have my gratitude for that. Even though these men hadn't seen the battle for themselves, it did seem that the young master intended to keep a low profile, so it would be ideal for him to limit any rumors as far as he could. In any case, the young master hadn't revealed his name at any point, so these men would be unlikely to point him out anyway. Don't worry, boss. Our lips are sealed. Confidentiality has always been my strong suit. The cultivators hurriedly nodded. Considering that a master teacher and the boss of the Spirit Emporium were involved in this conflict, they would not dare gossip about it for fear of losing their heads. And more importantly, even if they were to talk about the affairs that had happened today, others would simply take them as lunatic. After all, they wouldn't have believed such a thing to be possible either if they hadn't witnessed it themselves. Hearing the voices of agreement, Wei Changfeng turned to the attendants and instructed, "Men, give these guests a gift package each as compensation for the trauma they have suffered from this incident." To be able to build a business empire from scratch and sustain it for so many years in Hongyuan Empire wasn't an easy feat. Wei Changfeng was also quite a capable person himself. With a suitable use of threat and reward, those men should understand that it wouldn't be to their advantage to talk. Good. Seeing how Xiao Feng dealt with the incident promptly, Zhongxian nodded in commendation. In truth, the Spirit Emporium didn't have as many fakes as he'd claimed. Most of it was due to his framing. Even though the appraiser did exaggerate about the grade 6 pill, it wasn't so extreme that it could be considered poison. In truth, the so-called poison was a surge of zhenqi which he slipped into the pill while holding the jade box. After learning the Heaven's Path poison art, he could turn his Heaven's Path zhenqi into lethal poison on a whim. With that, poisoning a sample pill beast to death was not a difficult feat at all. If someone had realized what was going on and waited for a moment longer with the pill, the zhenqi he had hidden inside would have dissipated and lost its effect. As for the bronze gong, as a soul oracle, it was exceedingly easy for him to nullify its soul attack. Most of the subsequent fakes that he had pointed out were also tampered by him one way and another. He had identified their flaws via the Library of Heaven's Path and framed his cases accordingly. As easy as that, everything in the room had soon turned into a fake. As for the acknowledgement by the artifacts, just as Sun Qiong had thought, Zhongxian had already made them submit to him while introducing the various fakes to the crowd. If the other party had chosen to compensate him, he would have left without doing anything. Otherwise, he'd planned to tear apart the other party's nest with their own artifacts. Let's return. Since Wei Changfeng had sent his men after Sun Qiong, it was natural that he would know where their residence was. With his soul shackled, he would surely come to them after finishing up whatever he had to do at the Spirit Emporium. With his goal achieved, there was no need for Zhongxian to remain in the Spirit Emporium any longer. Thus, he and Sun Qiong leaped onto the back of the great violet-winged beast and soared into the sky, disappearing from everyone's sight. Back at the residence. "Young master, these are the high-tier spirit stones that the boss of the Spirit Emporium gave us earlier on." Sun Qiong passed over the 10 high-tier spirit stones which he had taken from Wei Changfeng earlier on. "All right." Grabbing hold of them, Zhongxian nodded in satisfaction. After which, he instructed, "You need not worry about money any longer. Go ahead and find a larger residence for us." With the boss of the Spirit Emporium as his subordinate, money was no longer an issue to them. Naturally, it was about time for them to find a more fitting residence. Honestly speaking, this place was a little too small for his liking. There wasn't even enough space for him to interrogate the Byzantium Alios beast. "Yes." Sun Qiong nodded. "For the time being, you all won't require high-tier spirit stones for your cultivation. Here are some artifacts and pills, deal with them as you deem fit. If it is of any use to your cultivation, go ahead and use it." Flicking his wrist, Zhongxian took out the various items which he had taken from the Spirit Emporium earlier. Sun Qiong stored the items in his storage ring and nodded. With these items, Zheng Yang and the others would be able to advance their cultivation by leaps and bounds. Sun Qiong suddenly recalled a matter and reported, "Young master, when I was out earlier today, I saw a residence that fits our criteria. Not only is it in close proximity to the Master Teacher Academy, it also has all of the amenities we require. However, it seemed like someone has just purchased it. It can't be helped if someone has already taken it. Hongyuan City is very big, it shouldn't be too difficult for us to find another larger residence," Zhongxian replied. Since the residence was only purchased recently, it was unlikely that the owner would be willing to sell it for the time being. Since that was the case, they might have better luck searching for another residence in the city. Besides, they weren't in a rush either. "All right. I will be in the Master Teacher Academy the next few days. If there is anything urgent, contact me through the Great Violet-Winged Beast. If that fails, go ahead and liaise with Xiao Feng," Zhongxian instructed. After Zhongxian was done with the arrangements, he leaped onto the back of the Great Violet-Winged Beast and flew for the academy. With this matter resolved, it was about time for him to head to the terpsichore school and demonic tunis school to browse through their books. He had to deal with the innate fetal poison in his soul as soon as possible so as to avoid any unexpected circumstances. Zhongxian had the great violet-wing beast land at the elite sector before sending it back to Sun Qiong's side. Just as he was about to ask around where the demonic tunis school and terpsichore school were, he suddenly heard knocking on his door. Opening his door, he saw Ruo Huangongzi, Luo Xian, Song Chao, and a few others standing at the doorway. After the entrance examination, they had been settled into their dormitories by Bai Shi and the other seniors. Upon hearing that Zhongshi had taken up a residence in the elite sector, they came over to pay their greetings. After trading a few pleasantries, Ruo Huangongzi dived into the main topic at hand and asked, "Brother Zhong, there is an event for students to find their teachers today. Are you going to participate in it?" "I will pass." Zhongxian shook his head. He had no intentions of finding a teacher. With the Library of Heaven's Path, all he needed was an ample number of books. "Actually, the reason we came to look for you today is to seek Brother Zhong's opinion on which teacher we should acknowledge in the academy," Ruo Huangongzi said sheepishly. In terms of age, he and Luo Xian could be considered as Zhongxian's senior. However, in the master-teacher continent, seniority was determined by one's capability. In a sense, addressing Zhongxian as a fellow peer could be considered as a sign of respect to him. I am not too familiar with the teachers of the academy." Zhongxian shook his head. How could he know which teacher would be the best in the academy? He wasn't going to seek a teacher in the first place. "You aren't familiar with the teachers of the academy? How can that be? We have already heard the rumors, and it seemed like you even rejected school head Mo's offer to become his direct disciple." Luo Xian exclaimed in disbelief. Zhongshi had performed outstandingly in the entrance examination, winning over school head Mo's admiration. As such, the latter had offered to take the other in as his direct disciple, only to be flatly rejected. This matter had already spread like wildfire across the entire academy. "Since you rejected even school head Mo's offer, doesn't that mean that you have a better candidate in mind?" "I haven't thought that far yet." "Speaking of which, since you are here, does it mean that you already have a person in mind? Why don't you tell me? I will help you ask around." Zhongxian smiled. Since they were asking for his opinion, they must have already taken a look around and had a candidate in mind, just that they were still feeling a little uncertain about their choices. Most freshmen lacked connections with the seniors to inquire about the various teachers in the academy. However, Zhongxian was acquainted with Luo Chichi and Yu Fei'er, as well as several schoolheads in the academy. If those didn't work, he could also ask the students in the elite sector. Surely at least one of them would be willing to share some insights. Even though it had only been 2 days since Zhongxian had cleared the entrance examination, he had already forged several connections which allowed him to maneuver around the academy easily. Chapter 759, Ashen Moon Faction. The teachers of the 10 schools will be conducting a public lecture each on their impartation podium later today. We hope that Brother Zhong can attend it with us. Your eyes are far more discerning than ours, so we trust your judgment more, Ruo Huangongzi said awkwardly. After suffering multiple blows while competing with the man before him, he knew better than anyone else that the other party was a man of incredible capability. If the other party could help him find a teacher, it would definitely be far better than him fumbling around and trying his luck. There were only 3 days for students to find a teacher. Their future was at stake here. They could soar to great heights with a good teacher, but if they were to make a mistake with this, they could potentially end up capping their future accomplishments instead. Eventually, they decided that it would be best for them to consult Zhongxian on this matter. They had all come from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, so they were familiar with one another. Even when compared to Hongshe and the others, Zhongshi's judgment was still far more precise and accurate. Impartation podium? Public lecture? Zhongxian was taken aback. Too overwhelmed by challenging the blacksmith examination, he hadn't had the time to learn what was going on in the academy yet. The impartation podium stood at the very center of the academy, and it was usually the venue for most major events. At the same time, it also served as a dueling platform for students to resolve their differences. As for public lectures, He had heard of them back when he was still a teacher in Hongtian Academy. To put it simply, it was a lesson which anyone could attend if they wanted. The public lectures served as a platform for students to assess a teacher's capability so that they could better choose their teachers. At the same time, it also introduced a fair degree of rivalry among the teaching staff, encouraging them to work harder and strive for excellence in their teaching. Yes, does Zhongshe want to head over as well? Everyone turned to look at Zhongxian. Seeing the determined expressions on their faces, it was clear that they wouldn't give up easily on this matter. After all, it was extremely easy for one to be overwhelmed by the sheer number of master teachers conducting public lectures there. This choice could potentially determine how far they would rise as a master teacher, so they weren't willing to take it lightly. After a moment of contemplation, Zhongxian nodded. "All right, I will go with you all then. This will be a good opportunity to see the standard of the teachers in the academy." Since most of the teachers were participating in this event, it was unlikely that there would be any people at the Terpsichore school or demonic tunist school, making it difficult for him to find the books he sought. Thus, he might as well make use of the time to take a peek at the quality of lessons in Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy so that he could have a rough gauge of where he stood. With Zhongxian having made up his mind, the group headed left for the impartation podium. It was some distance away from the elite sector, but with their current cultivation, it didn't take too long for them to arrive at their destination. There was only one word that could be used to describe the venue: congested. All 30,000 freshmen were currently standing atop the impartation podium, in search of a suitable teacher for them. There were also a couple of seniors who had decided to join in the bustle as well. Despite the immense size of the podium, it was completely packed with men. One would have easily gotten lost if it had been their first time here. Ruohuan Gongzi had looked into the event beforehand, so he began introducing the various technicalities regarding it. In order to better facilitate the freshmen around the various public lectures held by the teachers, they have divided the impartation podium in a manner such that there's a narrow passageway for movement, and as long as one walks along the passageway, they will be able to listen to the lectures held by all of the teachers. Hearing those words, Zhongxian glanced at the crowd ahead of him, and indeed, he could see that most people were heading in the same direction, which was likely where the passageway Ruohuan Gongzi mentioned was. Standing on elevated platforms on both sides of the passageway were teachers who were busy lecturing the crowd gathered around them. Being too far away, the group wasn't able to hear the content of the lectures. Nevertheless, they could see the intoxicated looks of the students listening to the lectures, seemingly fully immersed in the lecturer's words. Nearly all of the teachers in the Master Teacher Academy were 6-star master teachers, and at such a level, how could their ability to impart knowledge possibly be lacking? No matter how boring their lessons might be, their deep understanding of cultivation easily made up for it. Their words carried a kind of strength that drew people in, leaving the listeners deeply entranced by the brand new world opened to them. "Juniors, may I interest you in the teacher information documentation?" Just as the group was about to follow the crowd into the passageway, a smiling young man suddenly walked up to them and blocked their way. The young man seemed to be in his 30s, possessing a lanky figure reminiscent of a bamboo. A 5-star emblem stood on his chest, which showed that he was at least a grade 2 student in the academy. "Teacher information documentation?" Zhongxian frowned. The young man glanced in the surroundings, and after ensuring that no one was looking, he whipped out a book and passed it over while whispering in a hushed voice, "Yes. Our Ashen Moon faction has specially compiled all of the information regarding the teachers in the academy, as well as their various unique characteristics, interests, and the results of their students. Using this as a reference as you listen to the various public lectures, you will be able to make a better choice. There is such a thing." Bewildered, Zhongxian took the book, and just as he was about to flip it open, the young man before abruptly stopped him. "Every single one of us in the Master Teacher Academy possesses a photographic memory. If I allow you to browse through the book, how am I supposed to sell it? If you wish to look at it, you will have to buy it. Anyone with a soul depth beyond 10 would possess a photographic memory. Considering that the minimum requirement to enter the academy was for one to be a 4-star master teacher, it meant that every single student had a photographic memory. The teacher information documentation contained extremely precious information, and the other party was clearly intending on using it to earn some additional money. If he were to allow his customers to browse through it and memorize its contents, who would bother buying the book? How much does it cost? Ruo Huan Gongzi asked. Since this document had been prepared by the seniors, it should be accurate. If they could buy a copy, it would help facilitate them in choosing which teacher to acknowledge. Our Ashen Moon faction spent great effort to gather and compile the information, so we have to charge a higher price in order to recoup our losses. Each copy costs 100 middle-tier spirit stones, and the price isn't up for negotiation, the young man said. 100 middle-tier spirit stones? Everyone was shocked. Coming from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance, Ruo Huan Gongzi had barely seen any middle-tier spirit stones in his life. Luo Xian, who had come from the strongest sect in the region, fared slightly better in his financial position, but forking out 100 middle-tier spirit stones was still far beyond his means. As for Song Chao, he could hardly take out a middle-tier spirit stone under Zhong Xian's beguilement back then, so asking him to take out 100 at once was clearly asking too much. In other words, of all of them, Zhong Xian was the only one who could afford the document. The price sure was steep. Taking the distressed expressions before him into sight, the young man hurriedly said, "You all find the documentation expensive? You do know that there is detailed information on each and every teacher in here, right? Once you find a suitable teacher, it's just a matter of time before you make the breakthrough to become a 5-star master teacher. By then, you won't need to worry about having insufficient middle-tier spirit stones anymore." There was a huge gap between each rank of a master teacher. While there were limited opportunities for a 4-star master teacher to earn middle-tier spirit stones, 5-star master teachers didn't have such a worry. "Thank you for your concern, but we don't need it." Sighing deeply, Zhong Xian shook his head. 100 middle-tier spirit stones for a document. That was daylight robbery. Besides, Zhong Xian didn't need such a thing either. For one, he had just touched the book earlier, and a replica had appeared in his mind. On top of that, his version was more detailed with indications to mark which information was inaccurate. You don't need it. How could you not need it? Finding a suitable teacher in the academy is of utmost importance. If you take this lightly, you might just find yourself unable to progress a single step forward as a master teacher, and eventually, you might even end up being expelled by the academy. Not expecting the freshman to turn down his offer, the young man froze for a moment before hurriedly trying to persuade them. Rejecting a teacher that one had acknowledged was an extremely troublesome process that could result in dire consequences, so it was extremely important for the freshmen to choose their teacher wisely. If they were to make the wrong decision, their future would be bleak. "We really don't need it. We bought a copy earlier, so we don't need another one," Zhong Xian said. "You have already bought one?" The young man froze for a moment before a thought struck him, and he said, "Did you buy from the true Alios faction instead? I can tell you safely that the documentation they have is incomplete and inaccurate, so you will be far safer buying from me. If I may ask, what are the true Alios faction and Ashen Moon faction that you speak of?" Zhong Xian asked in confusion. "You don't know?" The young man was shocked for an instant before nodding in realization. "I forgot, you have just arrived in the academy, so it's natural for you to be unaware of it. Our academy has many student organizations, and every single one of them was established by the strongest students in the academy. Our Ashen Moon faction is led by Senior Long Tsungyue, while the true Alios faction is headed by Senior Shui Zhenyang." Long Tsungyue? Shui Zhenyang? Yuan, both of them are esteemed grade 5 seniors, and they possess formidable strength. As long as you join any organization, you will be given the opportunity to receive pointers from the seniors, the young man said proudly. Receive pointers? Zhong Xian pondered for a moment before he understood what was going on. To become a grade 5 student, one had to be a 6-star low-tier master teacher. Grade 1 students are at 4-star pinnacle and half 5-star, grade 2 students are at 5-star low-tier, grade 3 students are at 5-star high-tier, grade 4 students are at 5-star pinnacle, grade 5 students are at 6-star low-tier. Often, a teacher would be paired with many students, and this left them little time to care for all of them. Thus, it would be highly beneficial if they could receive the pointers of a 6-star low-tier master teacher outside of lessons as well. Indeed. The academy is filled with many geniuses, and if you can't keep up, you will only lag behind. This means that you might lose the opportunity to go on experimental training and obtain valuable cultivation resources. If you wish to keep up, the only way before you is to join one of these factions, the young man said. Hearing those words, Ruo Huan Gongzi, Luo Xian, and the others couldn't help but nod in agreement. Unlike Zhongshu, they didn't possess extraordinary talent or capability. Unless they received all of the resources they could get, it was impossible for them to stand out amidst all of the geniuses in the Master Teacher Academy. If they couldn't stand out, they might lose out on many valuable opportunities offered by the academy, thus limiting their future achievements. Thus, it was inevitable that they would have to join one of these student factions. Alright, you will get to know more of it in the future, so there is no need to worry about it at this point. For now, what is important is for you to find a teacher who fits your criteria, and the documentation offered by the True Alios faction won't be enough for it. I am only saying this out of worry, but you really should buy the one from our Ashen Moon faction. Not to brag, but our senior Long Tsungyue received a much higher placing than senior Shui Zhenyang in the annual tournament. The young man continued to advertise the book in his hand. I appreciate your gesture, but we really don't need it. If the book only cost 1 or 2 middle-tier spirit stone, Zhongxian could still consider buying it. But 100? That was clearly exploitation. How could he agree to it? Thus, he decided to turn down the offer. Seeing that the few freshmen before him were still unwilling to buy the document after all he had said, the young man's face darkened. You refuse? That won't do. Since you bought the documentation from True Alios faction, you must buy the one from our Ashen Moon faction as well. Otherwise, I can tell you that you will face a lot of trouble in the future for offending us. The smile had disappeared from his face, and his tone was menacing. Face a lot of trouble? Are you threatening us? Zhongxian asked impassively. The young man harumphed. Threatening? Of course not. This is just a warning from me in my capacity as your senior. Even though all of the students in the Master Teacher Academy are master teachers, the water here isn't as calm as it seems. Chapter 760. Meeting the white-robed lady once more. Oh? Why is that so? Zhongxian asked with a smile, unfazed by the other party's threat. There is a limit to the cultivation resources, training fields, and opportunities that the academy can offer to the students each year. Even slots for working as the receptionists or attendants of the various schools don't come easily. If you offend our Ashen Moon faction, I can guarantee you that we possess more than sufficient power to ensure that you won't be able to land yourself any missions or tasks year after year, making it impossible for you to earn even a single academic credit, the young man said. As a powerful student faction in the academy, it wasn't too difficult for them to make the life of a freshman a living hell. Unless... The young man paused. Unless you join our Ashen Moon faction, only if you join us will we extend our umbrella of protection to you. No other faction will dare to seek trouble with you, and there are also many faction-based missions and tasks that you will be able to participate in to earn academic credits. More importantly, if you join now, we can give you a copy of our teacher information documentation for free, sparing you from the additional expense. There are so many benefits from joining the Ashen Moon faction. But there is no such thing as a free lunch in the world. What will we have to give in return? Ruo Huan Gongzi asked. Since the faction was willing to offer its members so many benefits, surely it had to receive something in return. Otherwise, who would be so kind-hearted as to open a charity in the competitive academy? Simple. Once you become a member, you must obey the leadership of the Ashen Moon sect. On top of that, you must pay an academic credit to the faction each year and help manage the businesses of the faction, the young man replied. Pay an academic credit to the faction? Help manage the businesses of the faction? Everyone fell into deep thought. As they had expected, such a sweet deal couldn't possibly be without its shortcomings. Putting aside how they didn't have a single academic credit with them at the moment, even if they did, there was no academic credit that came easily. 1 academic credit each year was definitely a huge sum for them as grade 1 students. At the same time, they couldn't help but be shocked by how lucrative factions were. If the faction were to have 100 men, Wouldn't that mean that they would receive 100 academic credits annually? It was no wonder the grade 5 seniors would devote their time to establishing student factions and offering pointers to the members of their factions. With such benefits, they would do it if they were in the other party's position as well. As for the businesses, their primary function was probably to finance the expenses of the faction. After all, be it to build connections, conduct activities, or to reward the contributions of its members, they would surely need a source of income for its operations. As master teachers, the students all had supporting occupations, so they could contribute to the finances of the faction through offering pills they had forged or weapons they had smithed. For one, the young man before them who was marketing the teacher information documentation to them would probably have to hand the profits earned over to the faction eventually. The young man harumphed. That's right. You only have two options now. You can either buy the document or join our faction, or else you can look forward to endless trouble in the academy. Zhongshe, Ruo Huan Gongzi, Song Chao, and the others quickly turned their sights over to Zhongxian. The latter had already become their pillar of support, so in times of difficulty, they couldn't help but subconsciously look toward him for help. My apologies, but we will be taking neither of the options. Zhongxian shook his head. He wasn't interested in the book nor the benefits the faction had to offer. No matter how powerful the student factions were, could they be any greater than becoming the junior of one of the 10 great master teachers? Since he'd already turned down the latter, how could he possibly be, in the least, interested in the former? You have guts. You'd better pray that you manage to find a strong backer in this event, or else be prepared to be put through living hell in the academy. Seeing that the group before him rejecting his offer, the young man glared at them ferociously before flinging his sleeves and leaving. Zhongshe, what should we do if they really come knocking on our doors? Song Chao and the others asked worriedly. They didn't have Zhongxian's capability or backing, so unlike him, they couldn't afford to offend a powerful organization in the academy. Zhongxian waved his hands. We are in the Master Teacher Academy, so they dare not go too far. If they really try to pull something, I will look for School Head Mo and School Head Zhao to intervene in the matter, so you don't have to worry. For the time being, let us focus on finding a teacher for you first. Since they were master teachers, even if they wished to provoke another student, they would have to play within the rules. And in a game of rules, Zhongxian was confident that he could leave them on the verge of a breakdown. Putting aside a mere student faction, even all of the 10 great master teachers might not be a match for him in that regard. Hearing Zhongxian's promise, the others felt a little reassured. All right, we will be depending on you then. As the group made their way to the passageway, they encountered a few other factions such as the Descending Lunar faction and Demon Assembly faction. They attempted to persuade them to either join their faction or purchase their intelligence as well. Zhongxian casually took hold of their documents, and after noting that they were all around the same as the one offered by the Ashen Moon faction, he turned them down politely. Seeing the freshmen refusing all of their offers and rushing straight to the public lecture, the seniors in charge of selling the documents and promoting their factions shot them looks of sympathy. If one wanted to soar in the academy, there were 2 conventions they would have to go through. 1, they had to find themselves a suitable teacher. 2, they had to join a faction. Otherwise, if they were to go independent, they would be vulnerable to any trouble, and every single step they took would be fraught with difficulties. Academic credits would fall beyond their reach, causing their progress to stagnate. Not bothered by those arrogant seniors, Zhongxian led the group straight toward the passageway. A long queue had formed at the entrance of the passageway. On the very first stage, a 40-year-old teacher was currently in the midst of his lecture. Despite the loud bustle in the surroundings, the crowd beneath could still hear his voice resounding by their ears clearly, as if he was speaking to them personally. The core of cultivation lies in the heart. In the consonant spirit realm, one seeks to achieve a harmony between the body and soul, and in order to temper one's soul, one has to temper one's heart first. According to a plaque hanging on the stage, he was a 6-star high-tier master teacher from the apothecary school named Li Yuan, and the content of his lecture was regarding cultivation in the consonant spirit realm. After listening to it for a short moment, Zhongxian nodded. Even though the middle-aged teacher's lecture was still miles away from matching up to him and there were several mistakes in his understanding, Zhongxian still had to admit that the content he delivered was novel. If it was anyone else who was listening to this lecture, he might just receive a stroke of inspiration and advance even further in the consonant spirit realm. However, it was useless to Zhongxian. This Li Shi from the apothecary school is very detailed in his explanations, and he is very generous as well. If you were to become his student, you should be able to get a huge discount off his pills, sparing you a lot of money. With a hushed voice, Zhongxian swiftly introduced the profile of the middle-aged teacher on the stage. They had participated in the Master Teacher Tournament alongside Zhongxian, and they knew that he possessed the ability to view the content of a book without even flipping its pages. Thus, they weren't too surprised by his revelation, and they took a mental note of his words. Students were given 3 days to select their teacher after this event, so there was no hurry. Most students would use this time to sort out their choices before making their decision. Let's continue on. After gaining a clear assessment of the unique traits and capability of the middle-aged teacher, Zhongxian gestured for the group to proceed on. The next teacher in the line was from the physician school. His lecture was regarding the fusion of the way of medicine into cultivation, allowing one to remain resilient in the face of severe illnesses. If you were to learn from this teacher, you might not improve as fast as you would under the teacher from the apothecary school, but he will help you build a strong foundation which will be beneficial to you in the future. Zhongxian introduced. In the Master Teacher Academy, students could choose to join one of the 10 schools, and once they did so, they would have to put the corresponding supporting occupation as their second priority after Master Teacher. Naturally, joining a school would grant the students certain privileges as well. For example, if one were to join the apothecary school, they would be able to purchase pills at a discounted price. If one were to join the physician school, they would gain access to documents regarding the study of the human body, allowing them to build up a strong foundation in their cultivation. The blacksmith school had valuable physical body cultivation technique manuals, the beast tamer school had private mountains filled with rare beasts, the painter school had high-tier paintings that allowed one to calm their mind, enhancing their rate of cultivation. All in all, each school had their own strengths. Most students would usually choose based on their interest and proficiency in the occupation. After walking around for a while longer, Zhongxian slowly lost interest. Thus, he eventually searched for a less crowded area to stop at and took out an empty book. Taking out a brush and an ink slab, he swiftly copied down the accurate details which he had gathered from the documents compiled by the various factions, as well as what he had observed through the public lectures. I have written down the details regarding the teachers in this book, feel free to browse through it. It should be enough for you to find a suitable teacher. This book, which had been verified using the Library of Heaven's Path, had no errors whatsoever. With it, Ruo Huangongzi and the others should have no trouble finding a suitable teacher for themselves. UN. Ruo Huangongzi and the others nodded. By corroborating the content of the book Zhongxian compiled with the public lectures they had just listened to, they would have more than enough information to make a judgment themselves. There was no need for them to bother Zhongshi over the issue anymore. While you all are looking at the book, I will go take a walk around. Passing the book to them, Zhongxian stretched his back lazily. Just as he was contemplating whether he should make his way to the Terpsichore school or demonic Tunis school, he suddenly caught sight of a silhouette which sent a jolt through his body. Is that her? It was an elegant white-robed figure walking amidst the bustling crowd. Despite the clamor around her, her presence seemed to bring about a soothing aura to the surroundings, as if a calm painting. This was the exact same sensation that he had felt from the white-robed lady whom he had met at the Verdant Mountain back in Huanyu Empire. The world was big, so Zhongxian had thought that he would never see the other party ever again after their abrupt parting. But that familiar disposition and silhouette. Could it be her? Fearing that it was just an illusion and he might lose sight of her the next moment, he dared not turn his eyes away from her. Despite the congestion ahead, the crowd seemed to open up before the white-robed figure through some mysterious force, creating ample space for her to walk through. Yet, despite this bizarre phenomenon, there didn't seem to be a single person amidst the crowd who had realized it yet, as if it was a perfectly ordinary occurrence. What an incredible ability! Zhongxian narrowed his eyes. This phenomenon could only be produced by the comprehension of spatial laws. Those students had clearly moved from their original positions, but it seemed to them as if they were still standing on the same spot. Even Zhongxian didn't possess the means to do the same. Is it really her? Zhongxian muttered in a daze. Back when he'd first met the white-robed lady in the verdant mountain, he had sensed that the other party's cultivation wasn't too high. That was why he'd rushed forward to save her upon seeing that she had been encircled. Yet, when he was suffering a backlash due to the incompatibility between his soul and body, she was the one who'd intervened and facilitated an impeccable fusion between his soul and body. Such an ability was far beyond Zhongxian's current means. From this, it could be seen that she had concealed her true strength. Even at this time, he was still unable to gain a clear grasp of her strength. Flaws. Zhongxian muttered, but the next moment, he froze. She isn't using a battle technique? He'd thought that such manipulation of space could be considered as the usage of a battle technique, so he tried to check it through the Library of Heaven's Path. However, the Library of Heaven's Path remained completely silent. In other words, the young lady before him wasn't using a battle technique. Otherwise, the Library of Heaven's Path would surely have been able to compile a book on her. So far, he had yet to encounter anything which the Library of Heaven's Path was unable to discern. Who? Bewildered, Zhongxian was just about to walk forward to take a closer look when the white-robed figure, as if sensing his gaze, stopped and turned around. A beautiful face came into sight. It was indeed the white-robed lady he had met back then. Even though there were certain differences to her facial features due to some kind of disguise she was donning, those were incapable of fooling his eye of insight. With just a glance, he could tell that it was the young lady whom he had met back in the mountains. Unable to suppress his agitation, he rushed up to her and said nervously, "Why you are here as well?" The young lady was scanning her surroundings, as if trying to determine the source of the gaze when she suddenly caught sight of him. Her eyes lit up, and a light smile surfaced on her lips. For an instant, it was as if 100 flowers had bloomed. Chapter 761. You are a teacher? That lady carried a unique poise which emanated an explicable beauty when she smiled. Even Zhao Yue's disposition and beauty seemed to pale before her. Forcing himself to remain calm so as to not lose his bearings before the other party, Zhongxian asked, "Are you a student of this academy?" For some reason, he couldn't help but feel anxious and even a little lost before this lady. This was a feeling he had never felt from anyone before. He was in the Master Teacher Academy due to clearing the entrance examination and becoming a student here. Since the other party was here as well, could it mean that she was a student too? It would be great if that was the case. The thought of being able to spend many of the future days with the other party left him with a tinge of anticipation inside. However, the young lady shook her head. "No." Zhongxian was taken aback. "Then, are you the kin of one of the elders here?" There were strict rules in the Master Teacher Academy, and other than the students and the staff, no one else was allowed to step onto its premises. If she wasn't a student of the academy, could it mean that she was the daughter or relative of one of the elders here? Otherwise, how could she possibly appear within the academy? However, the young lady shook her head once more. Then, Zhongxian scratched his head, and just as he was about to continue guessing, a faint but graceful voice sounded by his ears. "Follow me." After which, the young lady before him began walking in a certain direction. "You can speak." Zhongxian was stunned. He hadn't heard a word from the other party back when they were on the verdant mountain, so he'd thought that she was incapable of speech. Who would have thought that not only could she speak, her voice would be so moving as well? "Of course I can." The young lady rolled her eyes with a smile. This fellow was truly a fool. Back on Verdant Mountain, she had killed a ferocious spirit beast who had tyrannized the region, thus winning her the gratitude of countless other spirit beasts who resided in the area. Therefore, those spirit beasts paid her a visit to express their gratitude, but in fear of disturbing her rest, they ended up gathering and lingering in her surroundings instead. Yet, that fellow had thought that she was under attack and forcefully pulled her down into the lake. They ended up swimming underwater for a long period of time in an attempt to escape from the pursuit of the other spirit beasts. Even at the very end, he thought that he had saved her life. He was truly a funny person. But despite the misunderstanding, She knew that he had done it out of the goodwill of his heart. Considering his bravery in charging into an army of spirit beasts to save her, she eventually chose not to point out the misunderstanding. He had saved her once, and she had returned the favor by resolving the issue regarding his soul. With that, she'd thought that their fate had come to an end, and they would never meet again. Who could have known that a day would come when they would meet once more? "Are you a student here?" the young lady asked as they walked side by side. "Yes, I am a freshman who have just arrived a few days ago. The last time we met at Huanyu Empire, I was actually just about to head here," Zhongxian replied. "I see." The young lady nodded in realization. So, he was a student here, no wonder she would see him here. After a moment of silence as they walked amidst the crowd, the young lady suddenly asked, "Have you chosen your teacher yet?" "Not yet. Actually, I have no intention of finding one at all." Zhongxian shook his head. "You don't intend to find a teacher?" The young lady was surprised. "Why?" Master teachers who had enrolled here sought to further their capabilities and reach greater heights. The insights of a high-ranked master teacher were highly beneficial to one's progress as a master teacher, so why wouldn't one find a teacher? "It's nothing much. I just haven't found a suitable teacher yet," Zhongxian replied with an awkward smile. It was not that he intended to lie to the other party, but he dared not speak the truth. How could he say that the standard of teachers here was too low, such that their lessons were completely useless to him? If he were to really utter those words, he would be pummeled to death by both teachers and students alike in the next instant. "What kind of teacher are you looking for? I might be able to help you on this matter," the young lady said. Even though she didn't have much of an understanding of the teachers in the academy, given her eye of discernment, she should be able to easily find a suitable teacher for him. This. Zhongxian scratched his head in distress. He had no intentions of acknowledging a teacher at all, so he wasn't too sure how he should respond to the other party's kind gesture. After all, he had rejected even school head Zhao and school head Mo. How could any of the other teachers compare to them? "I think that this teacher is not bad. His explanation of cultivation techniques is quite detailed, and he analyzes them in a systematic manner, starting from the basics before diving into the intricacies, making it easier for the students to comprehend the knowledge he is trying to impart." There was yet another moment of silence between the duo before the young lady suddenly stopped before one of the platforms and gestured to an old man who was in the midst of lecturing a crowd. Zhongxian glanced at the plaque hanging beside the old man and noted that he was from the Celestial Designer School. Having to deal with complicated mechanisms every day, celestial designers tended to have logical and systematic minds. Such a trait seemed to be particularly useful in the impartation of knowledge too, as such lecturers would slowly build up their reasoning based on sound logic, as if cogs slowly placed into position to form a whole system. This made their lectures far easier to understand and much more memorable. There were many freshmen gathered around him with agitated looks on their faces, seemingly intent on acknowledging him as their teacher. However, while students had the right to choose their teacher, teachers were allowed to choose their students as well. The more capable a teacher was, the more popular they would be amongst the students. Considering the old man's outstanding ability in imparting knowledge, there should be a significant number of freshmen who would apply to his tutelage. However, it remained to be seen how many he would accept. "He is indeed a good teacher, but he isn't suitable for me." Zhongxian shook his head. "Actually, you don't have to find a teacher for me. I don't intend to acknowledge a teacher for the time being. Let's talk about you instead. What's your name?" "My name." The young lady was just about to reply when agitated exclamations suddenly sounded from the students around. "I heard that a beautiful teacher has arrived in the academy, and she is going to hold her public lecture soon. Let's go and take a look." "What is there to look at?" "We are searching for a teacher, not a partner. I heard that she is a master teacher dispatched here from the Qingyuan Conferred Empire Master Teacher Pavilion to engage in experimental learning. Despite not even reaching 20 yet, she is already a 6-star master teacher, and even the 10 great master teachers have to regard her with respect." "Is that true?" "My uncle is a teacher here, and I heard this news straight from him. If we can acknowledge her as our teacher, we will surely be able to rise to great heights in the future. If she truly is a teacher from the headquarters, Her view must be much broader than ours. Right, what is her name? I don't think there is anyone who fits her profile from the teacher information documentation I purchased earlier. She is a new teacher in the academy, and not even the Ashen Moon faction or the True Alios faction has seen her yet, so naturally, they don't have any information on her. However, I did manage to get her name from my uncle. If I recall correctly, I think it is Luo Ruoxin. That is a beautiful name. Alright, I have decided. I shall go and listen to her public lecture. Amidst the bustle, many freshmen and seniors rushed forward excitedly, seemingly fearing that they wouldn't get a good spot if they were to be late. Beautiful teacher. Seeing the excited crowd, Zhongxian was rendered speechless. Just because a person was pretty didn't mean that they would be good at teaching. Let's head over as well. Hearing the mutters from his surroundings, the young lady shook her head and made her way over as well. You wish to see the beautiful teacher as well? Zhongxian was taken aback. She was a lady herself. Why would she be interested in the beautiful teacher too? The young lady simply flashed Zhongxian a mysterious smile before proceeding ahead. Zhongxian was bewildered, but he could only continue following behind the other party's back. Soon, they arrived before a stage. By this point, a huge crowd had already gathered in the area. An old man was currently standing on the stage, tidying it up. This stage seemed to have been erected just a moment ago, and unlike the other stages, it was completely empty except for a plaque that read Luo Ruoxin. Where is the beautiful teacher? Why isn't she here? Are you sure there is no mistake in your information? Mistake in my information? You must be joking. Do you see that elder on the stage? He is Elder Ju from the apothecary school. Elder Ju? Which Elder Ju? Which other elder has the surname of Ju in the apothecary school? Of course, it is Vice School Head Ju. Vice School Ju is actually tidying up the stage personally for the new teacher. It seems like the academy has a really high view of that Luo Shi. Such discussions could be heard amidst the students. Vice School Head Ju? Zhongxian was astonished. Of the 10 schools, the apothecary school ranked at the top. Due to the standing of the apothecary school, the various leaders of the school also held incredible prestige as well. For a vice school head of the apothecary school to clean up the stage personally, it seemed that Luo Shi was no ordinary master teacher. Seeing Zhongxian's expression, the young lady beside him asked, "How is it? Are you interested in taking Luo Shi as your teacher?" Not really. Zhongxian shook his head. Why? There are so many people here who seem to be interested in her, why aren't you? The young lady asked. Even among 2 master teachers of the same rank, most would choose to acknowledge the one who had come from the headquarters instead of the branch. This was due to the difference in terms of worldly view. Master teachers from the headquarters were likely to have come into contact with higher-ranked master teachers themselves, and their understanding of cultivation tended to be much deeper than master teachers from the branches. Take Luo Chichi for example. Even though she was only a 5-star apothecary as well, she was able to conduct a lesson for the other 5-star apothecaries in Huanyu Empire. Even if she is a good teacher, she can't possibly be better than me. Why should I acknowledge a person who can't even match up to me as my teacher? Zhongxian said confidently. So what if the other party had come from the headquarters? Could the cultivation techniques she had learned be more detailed and aligned with nature than the Heaven's Path cultivation techniques? That was impossible. Besides, even though the other students are calling her a beauty, I highly doubt that is the case. If she is truly as beautiful as the others claim her to be, why is she not here yet? Perhaps, she might even be hideous. Zhongxian continued with a smile. Even though he had never dated before, he knew better than to compliment another woman before the lady he fancied. Otherwise, he could very well incur her ire. Besides, he thought that beauty was just a marketing means for that Luo Shi. To master teachers, one's appearance was nothing more than a facade. What was truly important was their capability. Most likely, the issue regarding Luo Shi's beauty might just be an attempt by the academy to draw more students to her public lecture so as to win her goodwill. It wasn't like such a matter hadn't happened before. Hideous. The eyes of the young lady narrowed into slits. That's right. Don't worry, You will see once she appears. Zhongxian nodded confidently. Just as he was about to continue, Elder Ju on the stage suddenly caught sight of something and his eyes lit up. He hurriedly flew over and clasped his fist toward the young lady standing beside Zhongxian. Luosha, you are here. We have already prepared the stage for you. All right. The young lady nodded before turning to Zhongxian with an unreadable smile. You said that I am hideous, right? Why you are? Luo Ruoxin, Luosha? Zhongxian's body stiffened as his eyes bulged from their sockets. You aren't a student, but a teacher. This is the final chapter of the arc. You are a teacher. This first half of the year really has been a difficult one for me. As some might know, I am working on another novel known as The Records of the Human Emperor on Gravity Tales, and along with Library of Heaven's Path, I had to post 3 chapters on a daily basis, which is quite tough for me while having to juggle my other work. I ended up burning through every last one of my stockpile, and even after leaving the other novel on hiatus, I am still barely scraping through the days. Hopefully I will be able to build a sizable stockpile for me to last the next semester. Anyway, back to the story. I saw many saying that there isn't much story progression recently. I have to admit that the earlier parts of the story are more of like the daily life of Zhongxian, which I honestly believe is pretty interesting in itself too, but there will be more progression later on, especially as he gradually approaches the top of the master-teacher continent. It kind of feels like the crux of this arc is Zhongxian found his first love, which is kind of sad. He did live 2 lives, and happy at the same time. He is pretty much invincible in everything else, so I wonder if he will be invincible in love too. Anyway, I think this is the first time Zhongxian has been face-slapped anyway. The next arc will be Zhong Lao's students, or Teacher Zhong's students. Chapter 762 Library of Heaven's Path Upgraded 1. Zhongxian was flabbergasted. He'd thought that the young lady who seemed to be of the same age as him would be a student of this academy, but who would have thought that she was a teacher dispatched from the headquarters? It was just a moment ago that he'd said that the teacher dispatched from the headquarters would be hideous when it turned out to be the young lady he was interested in. He couldn't help but fidget awkwardly. If the young lady before him could be considered hideous, there would be no one in the world who was deserving of the word pretty. Even though her disguise had dulled her ravishing features, her ethereal disposition and elegant bearing still shone through, making it impossible for anyone to avert their gaze from her. Looking at the silly fellow before her panicking, Luo Ruoxin chuckled softly before turning around and leaping onto the stage. How beautiful! With such appearance, she must be the top beauty of our academy. Top beauty? That student over there, you must be joking. I am from the bewitching devil faction, and I can tell you that Sister Yaro Yaro is the most beautiful of them all. That's just your own opinion. In my view, Senior Dongshin is the prettiest. I still think that Princess Feier is the best. The other seniors are way out of our league. At least I might still stand a chance with Princess Feier. You wish to woo Princess Feier? Dream on. Haven't you heard how long Xing Yuan has courted her for? Honestly speaking, I am still the most entranced by Luo Chich's charms, but it's a pity that she isn't interested in me at all. Upon seeing Luo Ruoxin, a huge commotion broke out beneath. The rumors regarding the appearance of a new beautiful teacher had drawn many seniors here as well. In an instant, excited discussions sounded amidst the huge crowd. There were plenty of beauties in the academy as well, and there was even an unofficial ranking list made on them. However, every individual had their own fancy, so the seat regarding the top still remained contentious. I am Luo Ruoxin, a new teacher of Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. Paying no heed to the discussions below, Luo Ruoxin began introducing herself. Her voice carried some kind of entrancing property that immediately silenced the bustle below. The topic of my lecture will be how a cultivator can establish harmony between his body and soul in the consonant spirit realm. It is at the consonant spirit realm that a cultivator will start cultivating their soul, and any mistake made in one's cultivation at this point can potentially create a rift between one's soul and one's body, limiting one's strength. After listening for a moment, Zhongxian couldn't help but be impressed. As expected of a master teacher from the headquarters, the content was simple, but accurate and concise. Even he could not find any problem with it. No wonder the other party could easily resolve the issue regarding the incompatibility between his body and soul. Her understanding regarding the soul and body could be said to be on par with his. And that was an incredible feat. Zhongxian possessed the library of Heaven's Path, and he had gathered innumerable books so as to compile the perfected Heaven's Path divine art. Yet, the other party's level of understanding was actually equal to his. It seemed that Luo Ruoxin wasn't just an ordinary 6-star master teacher. Most probably, she was under the guidance of a high-rank master teacher as well. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to have analyzed the consonant spirit realm so thoroughly. Soon, the lecture came to an end. I'll be stopping the lecture here. Last but not least, if you wish to become my student, you just have to clear my test. If you fail it, I won't accept you. Luo Ruoxin waved her hand. Test? What kind of test? We beseech Luo Shi to elaborate more on the matter. It was only at this point that everyone finally awoke from the entranced stupor they were in. They understood that if they could take the other party as their teacher, they would be able to advance their cultivation, and their eyes were gleaming with anticipation. Simple, it's memorizing books. If anyone can memorize 10,000 books within 2 hours, I will accept them as my student. Luo Ruoxin replied, 10,000 books? Hearing those words, everyone nearly fainted on the spot. Even with their photographic memory, memorizing 2,000 books or so was already the limit. 10,000 books. They wouldn't even have the time to flip through all of the books, so how could they memorize all of them? They might still be able to give it a try if the test had been on something else, but this, it was clearly impossible. With such a test, will she be able to get even a single student? Zhongxian also fell into a daze. He could easily memorize 10,000 books through the Library of Heaven's Path, but it would be a difficult feat even for him if he had to do it manually. For one, he could be spared the additional time spent on flipping through the books in the Library of Heaven's Path, allowing him to go through the content swiftly. On top of that, his mind could process information far faster in the Library of Heaven's Path as well, allowing him to memorize 10,000 books within 2 hours easily. But without it, it was doubtful if even the 10 great master teachers were capable of such a feat. Thus, to bring up such conditions, that could only mean that Luo Ruoxin had no interest in accepting any students whatsoever. Elder Ju, I will be troubling you to deal with this matter. Leaving behind those words, Luo Ruoxin leaped off the stage with a light smile and headed toward Zhongxian. Let's go. Yuan Zhongxian nodded, and the duo walked away. Who is that fellow? It seems like he is a freshman. A freshman? How did that freshman get to know Luo Shi? Furthermore, from the looks of it, it seems like they have quite a close relationship. What is going on? Why can't it be me in his place? In what way am I inferior to him? That person is Zhongshi. As expected of the most outstanding man amongst us freshmen, he is able to even seduce that beautiful teacher. What do you mean by seduce? You are speaking as if Zhongshi has gotten together with her through unscrupulous means. That's called flirting, all right. Seeing Luo Shi leaving with a freshman, there were many seniors who clenched their fists in anger, furious that they weren't in that freshman's place. On the other hand, the remaining freshmen looked upon the sight with eyes gleaming in excitement, as if someone had done them proud. But regardless of their reactions, Zhongxian and Luo Ruoxin walked straight out of the crowd without paying them any heed. Soon, they were strolling along the lakeside of the academy. The scent of spring filled the air. A slight breeze blew, and the verdant greenery along the lake danced lightly to it. The brilliant rays of the sun struck the surface of the lake, evoking a beautiful gleam on it. Zhongxian slowly walked alongside Luo Ruoxin. Even though there was nothing but silence between them, he felt the utmost tranquility in his heart. The various happenings over the past half a year replayed in his head. The time he had spent as a teacher in Tianxian Kingdom, when he accepted his first few students and imparted knowledge to them. The time when he challenged the master teacher examination in Tianwu Kingdom and met Lu Chong in the midst of it. The time when he stomped into Shenyuan Kingdom and challenged the entire kingdom by himself. The time when he resided in the Myriad Kingdom Alliance and clinched the champion seat in the Master Teacher Tournament. The time when he accidentally caused some trouble at the Cleansing Lake in Huanyu Empire, venturing into the underground chamber where they believed Wu Yangzi resided and meeting the young lady beside him. In his long journey, his cultivation had advanced from Zhenqi realm all the way to Cosmos Bridge realm. His soul depth had also been raised from the initial 0.1 to the current 19.1, putting him on par with even 6-star master teachers. The various figures he had met in his journey flashed across his mind as well. Liu Shi, Zhuang Shi, Kang Shi, Mo Shi, Zhao Ya, Lu Zun, Lu Chong, Shenbai Ayu, Mo Yu. Be they acquaintances, students, or friends, they were all a part of his life, and they had all played a role in making him who he was. The various knowledge he had acquired in his time also flashed through his mind. Apothecary, painter, beast tamer, poison master, Hong Long. Just as these memories were floating in his head, he suddenly felt an intense rumbling in the library of Heaven's Path in his mind, and it was growing more and more intense as time passed. What is happening? Zhong Xian's eyes widened in fluster. The library of Heaven's Path was his greatest weapon that he could fall back on in dire times. Did something go wrong with it? However, there wasn't even time for him to think the matter through. With his mind on the verge of exploding, the sight before him grew blurrier and blurrier. Eventually, his body swayed weakly and he collapsed to the ground. Before losing consciousness altogether, he seemed to see Luo Ruoxin rushing over toward him and remarking, "Why is he fainting again? Is his body that weak?" Weak? Zhong Xian felt like crying at this very moment. The previous time he'd fainted was primarily due to the incompatibility between his soul and body, and this time, his library of Heaven's Path was suddenly acting up for no apparent reason. "I am really not weak, it is just a coincidence. Not only am I not weak, I am very fit as well. Trust me." However, before Zhong Xian could utter those words, his consciousness had already faded to an endless abyss of darkness. An unknown period of time later, Zhong Xian finally roused from his temporary coma. Opening his eyes abruptly, he realized that he was lying on the bed in his elite sector residence. Following which, Zhong Xian suddenly heard an excited voice, and a beautiful lady with a flawless complexion came into sight. "Teacher, you are finally awake. Little Qi, why are you here?" Zhong Xian asked in surprise. The person before him was no other than the student whom he had accepted back at Huanyu Empire, Luo Chichi. After leaving the underground chamber, they had left for Hongyuan City together. However, after reaching the city, they had separated as Zhong Xian headed for the Academic Sea to liaise with Hong Shi and the others while Luo Chichi returned back to the academy to report on the progress of their mission. "I heard from school head Zhao that you are currently residing in the elite sector, so I came over to look for you. However, on my way there, I saw you fainted by the lake, so I carried you here," Luo Chichi answered. "I fainted by the lake? Then?" Zhong Xian frowned. "You wish to ask about Luo Shi, is that right? She was beside you when I arrived, and she took a look at your condition and said that you were fine before entrusting you to me," Luo Chichi replied. "Entrusted me to you? So, she has already left?" Zhong Xian couldn't help but feel a little disappointed within upon hearing that news. But giving it some thought, they were nothing more than acquaintances who had a prior encounter before enrolling in the academy. The other party had no obligation to send him back to his residence. Besides, she was currently a teacher, and he was currently a student. Regardless of the reason, it wouldn't be appropriate for them to get too intimate with one another. Otherwise, it would reflect badly on both him and her if malicious rumors regarding them were to start spreading. "That's right. I heard that Luo Shi only arrived in the academy yesterday. How does teacher know her?" Luo Chichi asked out of curiosity. Based on what she had heard thus far, Luo Shi was a master teacher dispatched here from the headquarters. It was only yesterday that Mu Shi arrived in the Master Teacher Academy together with her, and before that, Zhong Shi had been together with them at Huanyu Empire. Thus, it seemed unlikely for them to know one another. "How do I know her? It's just a coincidence." "Right, the both of you share the same surname. Is there any chance that you knew one another before this?" Zhong Xian asked. Luo Ruoxin and Luo Chichi shared the same character in their surname Luo. At the same time, they were also extraordinarily beautiful ladies as well. Could they be related with one another? There are many people out there who possess the Luo surname. You are thinking too much into it. Luo Chichi couldn't help but chuckle at that deduction as she shook her head. Her teacher had always been a rather intelligent person. Why would he suddenly ask such a silly question? Considering the immense size of the master-teacher continent, there should at least be a few 100 million people in the world who possessed the surname Luo. What were the odds of two people possessing the Luo surname being related? That's true. Zhong Xian scratched his head. It was only in the spur of the moment that he'd asked the question, and he hadn't thought too much into it. How long have I been out for? Zhong Xian asked as he sat up from his bed. Around 3 days. Luo Chichi replied. 3 days. Zhong Xian was astonished. He was also out for 3 days the previous time. Why did it seem as if he was fainting more and more regularly recently, and for 3 whole days at that? That's right. The 3-day period for students to acknowledge their teacher is already over. Luo Chichi shook her head with a bitter smile on her face. Her teacher had truly fainted at an untimely moment. These 3 days should have been crucial to the future of the freshman, but he ended up sleeping through it. Chapter 763 Library of Heaven's Path upgraded 2. However, based on what she knew about her teacher, it shouldn't be a huge issue. Since he had rejected even Elder Mo and Elder Zhao, there should be no other person in the academy who would worthy of becoming his teacher. I see. As expected, after hearing her words, the young man before her shook his head, but it didn't seem like he was too affected by the issue. Instead, he seemed to be more worried about his acquaintance instead. So, how many students did Luo Shi eventually take in? If I recall correctly, Luo Shi didn't take in a single student at all. The requirement she set was simply too strict. Memorizing 10,000 books within 2 hours is an impossible feat. Luo Chichi shook her head. She didn't take in a single student. Zhong Xian was perplexed. Since she was a teacher of the academy, why didn't she take in a single student? Yes. I am not too sure what is going on, but this matter had everyone baffled, Luo Chichi replied. According to the rumors, Luo Ruoxin had been dispatched to Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy by the headquarters for experimental training, so she should have accepted a few students in order to complete her training. But if that was the case, why did she set such strict requirements? It was as if she was uninterested in accepting any students at all. After pondering for a moment, Zhong Xian eventually shook his head and said, I will ask her about it when I get the chance to. Putting Luo Ruoxin's issue aside, Zhong Xian's attention finally fell on Chichi, and with just a single glance, he was startled. You have made a breakthrough? The previous time he met her, Luo Chichi was at Cosmos Bridge Realm Pinnacle, the cream of the crop of the Grade 2 students. Yet, in just a few days, she had made the breakthrough to Transcendent Mortal 7 Dan Perfect Harmonization Realm. Yes, it is all teacher's credit. As a reward for the mission, I received School Head Zhao's Meridian and Bone Cleansing, allowing me to overcome my previous bottleneck. Luo Chichi smiled. If not for the Meridian and Bone Cleansing from School Head Zhao, even though she was already at Cosmos Bridge Realm Pinnacle, it would have still taken her several months or even an entire year in order to take the next step forward. Beyond Consonant Spirit Realm, one had to not only accumulate sufficient Zhenqi but nourish one's soul as well in order to make a breakthrough. It was often the latter that was more troublesome, requiring long periods of time just to increase it the tiniest bit. As a result, there were many Grade 2 students who were stuck at Cosmos Bridge Realm Pinnacle, unable to make the final step forward. However, in the Meridian and Bone Cleansing, not only had School Head Zhao purified her Zhenqi, he had also tempered her soul, thus allowing her to make the breakthrough instantaneously. Yu Fei, Xing Yuan, Wu Zhan, and Yi Qian had also benefited greatly from the Meridian and Bone Cleansing as well. My credit. Zhong Xian blinked. Why was this his credit? And what did this have to do with School Head Zhao? Did teacher forget about the mission at the underground chamber? You saved us and helped us retrieve Elder Wu Yang's body. That's a huge contribution to the blacksmith school, Luo Chichi explained. Ah! Hearing those words, Zhong Xian suddenly understood why Yuan Hong's attitude toward him abruptly changed after paying a visit to the school head's office. At this point, Luo Chichi suddenly bowed deeply and said, "Teacher, I apologize for handing the zither forging technique to the blacksmith school without your approval. I ask of you to punish me." She had only managed to obtain the zither forging technique manual with her teacher's assistance, but without the latter's approval, she had handed it over to the school. "You are the one who inherited Wu Yang's heritage. You can do whatever you want with it. Besides, the best way for the zither forging technique to shine is through handing it over to school head Zhao, so I believe that your decision was the right one as well," Zhongxian said. Luo Chichi was the one who had become Wu Yang's student, so it was only right for the technique to belong to her. In this respect, it wouldn't be right for Zhongxian to dictate what she could do with it. "Thank you, teacher." Even though Luo Chichi knew that her teacher would agree to it, she didn't expect him to approve of her actions immediately. After all, the zither forging technique was an incredibly valuable smithing technique which many were dying to lay their hands on. His magnanimity was indeed worthy of respect. After chatting for a moment longer, Luo Chichi suddenly recalled something and said, "Teacher, regarding the matter of Elder Wu Yang's old residence, I tried looking into it and there was someone who claimed that they knew where it was. I made an appointment with them tonight, and it is going to be time soon. I will have to head over to meet them. Tonight." Zhongxian glanced at the window outside, and only then did he realize that the sun was beginning to set beyond the western horizon, and the sky was beginning to dim. "I see. Let me grab some food first, and I will accompany you to the meeting," Zhongxian said after some contemplation. The 3 days of sleeping had already emptied out whatever that was in his stomach. "I knew that teacher would be hungry, so I prepared some food." Luo Chichi chuckled as she flicked her wrist, and a huge spread materialized before her. "Thank you." Looking at the delicacies before him, Zhongxian's appetite was whetted, and he immediately dived into action. While stuffing his mouth, he made use of this opportunity to immerse his consciousness into the library of Heaven's Path. The reason he'd fainted 3 days ago was due to the rumbling in the library of Heaven's Path. Since he had woken up, it was imperative that he should check what had happened to it. As soon as his consciousness entered the library of Heaven's Path, he froze. Something is different about it. Previously, the library of Heaven's Path had been a large hall with towering shelves filled with books, expanding all the way to the horizon. The basic layout was still the same, but somehow, it felt larger, as if the ceiling and shelves were taller than before, and the area had become more spacious. It seemed like the rumbling had caused several changes in the library of Heaven's Path. Not only had it grown larger, it had also become much more majestic and grander. Looking at it from afar, one couldn't help but feel intense pressure on one's soul. The library of Heaven's Path felt like a moon reflected in the water before, ethereal and transient. At this very moment, however, it felt palpable, as if it was a real library standing before him. The library of Heaven's Path seems to have materialized further, but what is the use of it? Zhongxian muttered doubtfully. He stepped forward and attempted to grab one of the books on the shelves, but just like before, his hand simply slipped through it. In other words, even though the books seemed much more tangible than before, they were still illusory. They could be seen but not touched. "Where are the books I have gathered before?" Zhongxian mumbled as he walked around the library. Fortunately, he soon arrived at a section where the books he had gathered previously were. It seemed like they hadn't disappeared due to the changes in the library of Heaven's Path. Walking up to them, he casually grabbed one and began flipping through it. Voila! With the flipping of the books, the sight before Zhongxian blurred as the content of the book dove straight into his mind, etching itself onto it. Zhongxian widened his eyes in astonishment. Even when reading in the library of Heaven's Path previously, he'd needed to read the words one by one in order to memorize them. But at this instant, he was able to memorize the content of the book just by flipping through the pages. After several tries, he had verified the matter. As long as he picked up a book with the intention to read it, the content would automatically imprint itself onto his mind, sparing him from the additional effort of reading it. This is great. I will be able to pick up my reading pace in the future. Zhongxian's eyes lit up in agitation. It seemed like along with the renovation in the library of Heaven's Path, he had also gained an additional ability. With his newfound ability, He could easily cover several 100,000 books in the Library of Heaven's Path within 2 hours. In the future, he wouldn't need to waste the hard-earned golden pages on assimilating the knowledge within the books anymore. My pace of reading has quickened. Is it possible that my other abilities might have been enhanced as well? Zhong Xian thought. He swiftly extracted his consciousness from his mind and glanced at the chicken drumstick he was currently tearing the flesh out of. Flaws, he muttered. A book appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path, and he swiftly rushed to flip through it. The Thigh of Spirit Beast Boneless Chicken. Cooked by Master Gourmet Wu Bushui of Drunken Heart Tavern using 47 different spices and herbs. It took him just an instant to read through the entire book. Nothing has changed at all. Zhong Xian scratched his head. Just like before, the flaws regarding the dish were compiled in the book. There didn't seem to be any additional ability regarding this. I should try it on some other objects to verify the matter. Perplexed, Zhong Xian turned his sight to the bookshelf before him. The residences in the elite sector were filled with all kinds of amenities that one might require. There were bookshelves filled with books in the residence as well. However, they weren't cultivation technique manuals but books on the geography and culture of Hongyuan City. Zhong Xian was just about to stand up and make his way to the bookshelf when a thought suddenly came to his mind. Thus, he sat back down and muttered, "Flaws. Who?" A book appeared in his mind. This. He was only giving it a try out of curiosity, not holding much hope that it would work, but it actually did. A book had really appeared. He swiftly dived into the Library of Heaven's Path to flip through the book. It was a replica of the book which he had intended to take in earlier. He experimented a few more times, and the excited gleam in his eyes intensified. It seems like I can gather books in the Library of Heaven's Path without touching them. Previously, the only way for him to gather a book was to touch it with his hands. However, with his newfound ability, he could compile books just by laying his eyes on them and willing it. In other words, gone were the days where he had to run frenziedly in libraries to gather book. Recalling those embarrassing days where he had been caught running about in the various libraries, he couldn't help but feel a little moved within. And more importantly, his efficiency to gather books had also been boosted immensely. Does this ability apply to other objects as well? Zhong Xian wondered. He had only experimented with books so far, and he was curious to see if this ability was extended to other items as well. To his disappointment, however, it didn't work on other items. It seemed like his newfound ability only worked on books at the moment. He could gather books just by laying his eyes on them, but as for artifacts and other items, he still had to lay his hands on them in order to find their flaws. Frustrated, he shook his head. He had gotten excited over nothing. If he could discover the flaws of other objects without touching them, he would be spared a lot of trouble, and his ability would be far more versatile as well. Perhaps it was due to the Library of Heaven's Path having yet to reach the required level or an innate flaw in the heavens itself, but he simply couldn't realize the ability at the moment. Or maybe I am just lacking practice. I should give it a few more tries just to be sure. The indignation Zhong Xian felt made him unwilling to give up, and he began experimenting once again. And while he was busy experimenting with his abilities, Luo Chichi, who was sitting beside him, was stunned. She had bought a table full of delicacies for her teacher to enjoy, but the latter. One moment, he would pick up a chicken thigh, stare deeply into it, and shake his head in disappointment. The next moment, he would look around the room, stare intensely at another object he'd laid his eyes upon, and clench his fists in excitement. It was as if those items were his friends. Countless different expressions flickered across his face as he lay their eyes on them, be it melancholy, graveness, relaxed, excitement, delight, frustration. Could he have gone bonkers due to the coma? Or did he lose a part of his soul somewhere? Surely a normal person would express so many emotions not toward a chicken thigh but her, right? No matter what, she was one of the most beautiful ladies in the academy. Yet, she couldn't even hold a candle to the charm of a chicken thigh. Just as she was sighing deeply, she saw her teacher stretching his other hand forward to tear another chicken thigh before staring at both thighs even more intently. It was as if he was responding to her doubts. If one chicken thigh wasn't enough, how about two? Luo Chichi. Chapter 764, Hu Yaro Yaro. It took a while before Zhongxian was finally done inspecting the chicken thighs and put them down. It seemed like, for objects other than a book, laying his sight on them wasn't enough. He still had to come into physical contact with them in order to collect their information in the library of Heaven's Path. Nevertheless, it is good enough that I am able to gather and read books faster than before. Zhongxian thought in satisfaction. It was embarrassing that a noble master teacher like him had been forced to run around in the library in order to collect books in the past. With the newly upgraded library of Heaven's Path, he would be able to remain graceful while taking in new knowledge. Soon, he completed his meal and stood up. I'm done. Let's go. Back at the underground chamber where Wu Yangzi had been imprisoned before his demise, he had said that he had left his most important heritage and treasure at the 3 stars of the Earth Dragon. However, it had been 2,000 years since his passing, and putting aside whatever the 3 stars of the Earth Dragon was, even finding his old residence was a huge trouble in itself. Luo Chichi had been looking into the matter ever since her return, and in the past 2 days, while she was taking care of the unconscious Zhongxian, she'd happened to receive some clues to the matter. All right. Luo Chichi nodded. As they were walking out of the residence, they suddenly saw a young lady standing before the door, seemingly intending to knock on it. Upon seeing Zhongxian, she quickly clasped her fist and bowed. Zhongshe, Ran Xiao Xiao? Zhongxian asked doubtfully. It was the person who had challenged him back when he'd first received the keys to the residence, as well as the second runner-up in the Grade 1 annual tournament. She had challenged him to a duel of impartation of Heaven's will, only to end up falling under his control and defeating the first runner-up Wu Chan and third runner-up Xiao Nan in his stead. Yes, I came here to thank Zhongshe for your guidance. Ran Xiao Xiao smiled. Initially, she was extremely displeased to hear that a freshman was going to take up the first residence available to Grade 1, which was also the reason why she'd marched up to his residence upon hearing the news and challenged him to a duel. Yet, the other party had been able to point out the various flaws in her cultivation directly, and it was then that she'd realized the gap between her and the other party. Under the other party's guidance, she'd been able to overcome her bottleneck, achieving a long-awaited breakthrough in her cultivation. Out of excitement, she'd rushed to his residence in order to express her gratitude. At the same time, she had also heard some worrying news, so she came over to inquire about it as well. There is no need to stand on ceremony. We are fellow students, so it's only right for us to help one another. Zhongxian waved his hands casually. If not for Zhongshe's guidance, I would still be stuck at my previous bottleneck, unable to take a step forward in my cultivation. Ran Xiao Xiao was just about to bow deeply to express her gratitude once more when she suddenly caught sight of the figure beside Zhongxian and widened her eyes. Senior Chichi. She had been too excited to see Zhongxian earlier on that she'd neglected the person who was standing behind him. To her astonishment, it was the most famous Grade 2 senior of the academy, Luo Chichi. Luo Chichi nodded in response to her. Ran Xiao Xiao was one of the top 5 geniuses of the Grade 1 students, so it was natural that Luo Chichi had heard of her as well. You too. Ran Xiao Xiao blinked rapidly in shock. Luo Chichi was extremely famous in the Master Teacher Academy, not just because of her incredible talent or her beautiful features, but more importantly, it was said that she had an extraordinary background as well. She was known to be very diligent, spending most of her time studying and cultivating. Thus, she rarely had any interactions with the opposite sex. Why would she be in Zhongshe's residence? On top of that, the sun had already disappeared beyond the horizon, and darkness had set into the sky. For 2 people of the opposite gender to meet under the same roof in the middle of the night. What could they be up to? I am learning pill forging from Zhongshe. He is my teacher. Luo Chichi replied. Teacher. Ran Xiao Xiao widened her eyes in disbelief upon hearing those words. Zhongshe is just a Grade 1 student in the academy, and on top of that, he only arrived a few days ago. For a Grade 2 genius like you to acknowledge him as your teacher. Not to mention, you are also one of the school belles. If word spreads, won't a riot occur amongst the men of the academy? If you are here to thank me, there is really no need for it. As fellow master teachers, we should help each other wherever we can. Not wanting to be delayed here, Zhongxian waved his hand as he prepared to leave with Luo Chichi. Hearing those words, Ran Xiaoxiao suddenly recalled the other reason she was there, and she quickly spoke up. Actually, there is another matter I need to talk to Zhongsha about.
Oh.
Over the last few days, as I was walking around the academy, I heard some news. The student populace is saying that you have offended quite a few student factions, and it seems they are going to coordinate with one another to deal with you. Ran Xiaoxiao said worriedly. I offended the student factions? When did I? Zhongxian was taken aback. He did refuse to purchase the teacher information documentation from the factions back then, but surely, they wouldn't be that offended over such a small matter. Besides, it should be his freedom to decide whether he would buy something or not. 4 student factions consisting of master teachers to band together against him over such a small matter, that was plain ridiculous. You didn't offend them? Seeing the confusion on the other party's face, Ran Xiaoxiao shook her head. These student factions spend the entire year gathering information on each teacher in order to compile them into a book so as to sell them to the freshmen. However, their business ended up being foiled by Zhongsha, and their morals were even questioned for their doings. How could they possibly not be angry? I foiled their business? Zhongxian scratched his head in confusion. But I didn't do anything at all. What the heck did I foil? I have been unconscious the past 3 days, so what could I have possibly done? Or are you saying that I actually sleepwalked and did something that even I am unaware of? You didn't do anything. Ran Xiaoxiao sighed deeply in frustration. Does Zhongsha know the freshmen Jun Ruohuan, Song Chao, and Luo Xian? I do, Zhongxian replied. The 3 of them have distributed their own version of the teacher information documentation in your name for free, and the content of the book has been shown to be even more detailed and accurate than those sold by the other student factions. This has caused a huge uproar amongst both the freshmen and seniors alike, Ran Xiaoxiao said. They distributed the teacher information documentation for free? Zhongxian's eyelids began twitching uncontrollably. That explained everything. It was out of goodwill for the trio that he'd compiled a version of the teacher information documentation based on the information he had gathered from the others so that they could better choose their teacher, but those fellows actually distributed them freely to the other freshmen. Not to mention, they even used his name. While the other factions were selling theirs at 100 middle-tier spirit stones each, they were giving them away for free, and their version was even more accurate at that. That was practically spoiling the market. Of course they would incur the ire of others. However, it was unlikely that Jun Ruohuan and the others were intentionally trying to screw him over. Most likely, they were just intending to build up a good reputation for him amidst the student populace, just that they failed to think the matter through. As a result, they ended up offending most of the student factions. Once a freshman offends the student factions, he will find himself hindered throughout the academy. Zhongsha, you must be careful. If things really come down to it, it might be necessary for you to consider joining a powerful student faction so as to come under their protection, Ran Xiaoxiao advised. She was a member of a student faction as well, so she was conflicted for a moment after hearing the news. But eventually, she still decided to inform Zhongxian of this issue. Zhongxian might be powerless against the student factions as an individual, but if he could come under the umbrella of one of the more formidable factions, it would be harder for the other factions to do anything to him. Thank you. Knowing that the other party had chosen to inform him of this matter at the risk of falling out with her faction, Zhongxian thanked her earnestly. To be honest, while it might be troublesome, he didn't really fear the student factions. After all, from the start of his journey from Tianxian Kingdom until now, there was no lack of people he had offended. If they knew what was good for them, they would learn to stay out of his way. Otherwise, he didn't mind showing them his true prowess. Even the boss of the Spirit Emporium was nearly driven insane by him, let alone a couple of students. I will be taking my leave then. After saying all that needed to be said, Ran Xiaoxiao clasped her fist and left. Those student factions are troublesome to deal with. Teacher, you must be careful, Luo Chichi said with a frown as she watched Ran Xiaoxiao's departing back. Having spent several years in the Master Teacher Academy, she had seen plenty of the filthy doings of those student factions. If they were to really put their mind to it, They could even force a student to retire voluntarily in just a single day. This was the reason those without backing or power had to join a student faction. Otherwise, they would be too vulnerable to survive in the academy. I understand. Knowing that the other party was saying those words for his sake, Zhongxian nodded. Luo Chichi was worried, but considering how Zhongxian had school head Mo and school head Zhao's protection, those student factions shouldn't dare to act too brazenly. Thus, she decided not to think too much into it. The duo walked along the streets, and soon, they arrived at a gazebo beside the lake. This is the location I have agreed on with the other party, Luo Chichi said as she came to a halt. Who is it? Are they a student of the academy? Zhongxian asked. I am not too sure either. I sent the request at the Sucker Tower, and someone responded to me. We made an appointment to meet here. Unfortunately, there are no additional details regarding the other party's profile, Luo Chichi replied. I see. Zhongxian nodded. The Academy's Sucker Tower was a place where the students or even teachers could post requests such as to seek assistance on certain subjects they were unsure of or to help them with a certain problem in exchange of certain rewards. Often, the reward tended to be academic credits. In a sense, it worked in a similar fashion to the Wall of Dilemma in the physician guilds. It had been 2,000 years since Wu Yangzi had disappeared, and the map of Hongyuan City had also changed significantly over the years. Without any additional assistance, it would take forever for them to track down the location of his old residence. Thus, Luo Chichi decided to post a request at the Sucker Tower, promising academic credits in exchange. She'd thought that it would take quite a long period of time before she could receive an answer, but who would have thought that she would receive a response on the third day? However, as the identities of respondents and responders were kept anonymous by the Sucker Tower, it was impossible for her to know who the other party was. Nevertheless, considering that they were in the academy, the other party should either be a student or a teacher. Let's wait a little longer then, Zhongxian said. At that moment, a breeze suddenly blew, and a figure abruptly emerged from the darkness of the night. Under the dim illumination of the stars, one could barely make out the silhouette of a lady. She was tall, but what particularly stood out was her slender waist, which one could easily wrap around with a single hand. But despite her slender waist, she had a curvaceous figure which would send the hearts of males running in agitation. Who? Soon, the figure landed in the gazebo. Finally, Luo Chichi managed to catch sight of the other party's appearance. She was a young lady in her late 20s. Just like Yu Fei'er and Luo Chichi, she had a beautiful face with distinctive features, but unlike the duo, she commanded a bewitching air around her. Senior Yao Yao. Taken aback, Luo Chichi quickly clasped her fist and greeted her. Oh, so it's you. Recognizing Luo Chichi and well, Hu Yao Yao asked curiously, are you the one who is seeking out Wu Yang's old residence? That's right. Luo Chichi nodded. Do you have any news regarding that? I do know something about it. Hu Yao Yao nodded. Hearing the other party's confirmation, Luo Chichi clenched her fists tightly in agitation. However, at that moment, she suddenly caught sight of the look of confusion on her teacher's face, so she quickly filled him in. Teacher, she is a grade 5 student from our academy, Senior Hu Yao Yao. Hu Yao Yao. Zhongxian scratched his head. Hu Yao Yao, Luo Chichi, Ran Xiao Xiao. Was this a trend in the academy? Why did all of the ladies he had met had such names? You don't know me? Seeing the confused look of the young man before her, Hu Yao Yao was perplexed. She walked up to him, and with an entrancing smile, she asked, what's your name? Me. For some reason, Zhongxian hesitated for a moment before replying earnestly, I am Xian. Chapter 765, Negotiations Pu. Luo Chichi nearly fainted on the spot. However, with her sharp wits, she swiftly understood what kind of bizarre thoughts were in her teacher's mind, and a helpless smile appeared on her face. Her teacher was a person of great capability, but sometimes, his thoughts tended to be eccentric. Xian? Hu Yao Yao asked, bewildered by the bizarre name she was hearing. Fearing that the other party might misunderstand his intentions, Luo Chichi quickly replied, he is my apothecary teacher, Zhongxian. Zhongxian. So, you are the freshman who wrecked the business of our student factions? Hearing that familiar name, Hu Yaro suddenly recalled something, and a glint flashed across her eyes. A chilling smile emerged on her flawless face as she examined the young man before her, determined to see what it was about him that dealt such a heavy blow to the finances of so many student factions at once. Ever since the establishment of the Master Teacher Academy, there had never been a freshman who had caused such a huge uproar in the academy before, resulting in nearly all of the student factions incurring huge losses. However, no matter how she looked at the young man before him, he had an honest face and an earnest gaze, completely unlike how the rumors made him out to be. She couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Hu Yaro turned to Luo Chichi and asked, "You just said that he is your apothecary teacher? What is going on?" Just like her, Luo Chichi was a reputable figure in the academy, famed for both her talent and beauty. In terms of prestige, the other party might be beneath her at the moment, but that was only due to her young age. She had no doubt that with sufficient time, Luo Chichi would be able to surpass her. Thus, she had been keeping tabs on this young lady since shortly after she enrolled at Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy. Yet, such an outstanding person actually said that Zhongxian was her apothecary teacher. This was particularly astonishing. Just like I have said, Zhongshe has been guiding me on pill forging, Luo Chichi replied shortly, choosing not to go into detail. Since you know where the old residence of Elder Wu Yangzi is, can you tell us where it is? Once we confirm the location, I will compensate you with 2 academic credits. I don't want the 2 academic credit. Since Luo Chichi was unwilling to explain, Hu Yaro also chose not to probe into the relationship between her and Zhongxian. You don't want them? Luo Chichi frowned. The Sucker Tower was basically like a market, a platform for students to liaise with one another and conduct trades. Since the other party had accepted the request, it could only mean that she had acknowledged the reward as well. If so, what did the other party mean by rejecting the reward? Fiddling with her hair, Hu Yaro replied with a smile, "I can tell you where Elder Wu Yang's old residence is, but you have to tell me the reason why you are willing to spend such a heavy price for the information." It had been 2,000 years since Wu Yangzi had disappeared from the face of the world. There had been many people who had inherited his old residence in this period of time, so any treasure left there should have already been swiped clean by others. Yet, Luo Chichi was offering 2 academic credits to purchase information about his old residence. It was clear that she was up to something. "Pardon me, but I can't tell you that." Luo Chichi shook her head. Wu Yangzi was the most famous blacksmith in the history of Hongyuan Empire, so there was no doubt that the treasures he had in his possession would surely be of exceptional value as well. There might be a few who would attempt to do them harm out of greed if news regarding Wu Yangzi's treasure was to be made known. "Oh." Seeing that Luo Chichi was unwilling to talk about it, Hu Yaro said, "If you refuse to say it, it only means to say that our deal is through, and I won't be able to tell you where Elder Wu Yang's old residence is located. Let me just tell you this, I am the only one who knows where it is. Even if you were to search through all of the books in the academy, you won't be able to find his old residence without my help." Luo Chichi turned to Zhongxian, and upon seeing him shake his head, she said, "I see, but we will still have to turn down your offer if that is the case. We will manage it one way or another." Following which, she clasped her fist and bowed. "I apologize for wasting your time. We will be taking our leave now." After which, she left the gazebo together with Zhongxian. They were determined to find Wu Yang's treasure, but even so, they knew that they mustn't let anyone else learn of it. Otherwise, not only would they be unable to obtain the treasure, their lives might even be threatened as well. Wait a moment. Seeing that the other party would rather abandon the deal than speak of their goal, Hu Yoro's lips curled up as she said, "Since you are unwilling to speak of it, allow me to change the conditions then." Luo Chichi halted in her footsteps and turned around. "You should have heard the news by now, right? Zhongxian has offended nearly all of the student factions in the academy, including mine. As long as you hand him over to me, I will show you to Wu Yang's old residence." Hu Yaro said. "Hand him over to you?" Luo Chichi frowned as her face darkened. "Hu Yaro, I respect you as a senior, but this is a grave humiliation. You want me to hand my teacher over to you? She had already introduced Zhong Xian as her teacher, but the other party still demanded that she hand him over. This was no different from a direct slap to her face. As the saying goes, a day as one's teacher, a life as one's father. One, if she couldn't even protect her own teacher's dignity, what remaining pride would she have? Realizing the problem in her words, Hu Yarou swiftly apologized. I apologize for my inappropriate remark. Even though Zhong Xian is your teacher, he is a grade 1 student of the academy as well. I ask of you to pardon my discourtesy. Teachers were highly respected in the master-teacher continent. Heaven, earth, kin, teacher, sovereign. Two beneath the heaven and earth, the position of one's teacher was even above that of one's country. It had been ingrained so deeply into her that Zhong Xian was a grade 1 student that she'd accidentally neglected the fact that he was Luo Chichi's teacher as well. To insult one's teacher before one's face was grossly disrespectful. To display such blatant discourtesy for another's teacher despite being a master teacher, her reputation would be sullied if this were to be made known to others. After apologizing, she turned to Zhong Xian and said, Zhongshe, since you have come here with Luo Chichi, you must be interested in locating where Elder Wu Yang's old residence is as well. As long as you agree to my conditions, I will tell you where it is. What do you think of it? Seeing that the other party had decided to turn her efforts to him instead, Zhong Xian asked with an earnest smile, what are your conditions? It's simple. You ruined our bewitching devil faction's opportunity to earn money, so it's only right that you make up for it. As long as you join us and help us earn 100,000 middle-tier spirit stones within a year, I will tell you what you want, Hu Yarou said with a smile. Bewitching devil faction? Zhong Xian was taken aback. Is that your faction? There were many benefits to having a faction, so most of the top grade 5 students would choose to create and manage their own factions. Zhong Xian seemed to recall hearing something about the bewitching devil faction before, and from the looks of it, it seemed to be related to the young lady before him. Seeing the look of confusion on her teacher's face, Luo Chichi sent a telepathic message over to fill him in. Hu Yarou, her name carries the character Yao. At the same time, she possesses bewitching charm. As a result, her faction is also known as the Bewitching Devil Faction 3. That's right, I am the leader of the Bewitching Devil Faction. Seeing that the other party was ignorant of this, Hu Yarou was a little speechless. To offend so many student factions despite not knowing who their leaders were, this fellow sure was impudent. I see. Coming a realization, Zhong Xian nodded. Gazing at the seductive young lady whose voluptuous figure could easily hasten a man's breathing, he said calmly, I am not interested in joining any faction. As for earning 100,000 middle-tier spirit stones, I don't even have that sum myself, so how could I possibly earn that for you? Choose another condition. He was the type of person who would never allow himself to be placed in a disadvantageous position, and yet the other party wanted him to pay? That was a good joke. Change another condition? Sure. Hu Yarou stretched her back lazily, accentuating the beautiful curves on her body. Serve as my servant for a year, and I will forgive you for crossing my bewitching devil faction. At the same time, I can tell you where Wu Yang's old residence is as well. Servant. Zhong Xian was speechless. That lady was truly going further and further. Shaking his head, he replied, I wouldn't even accept you as my maid, and you want me to be your servant. You sure have a vivid imagination. Zhong Xian meant those words. In his opinion, the only thing that was commendable about the other party was her beauty, but even that paled far in the face of Luo Ruoxin. He wouldn't even be interested to have her serve as his servant, and yet she wanted him as her servant. Dream on. Hearing the arrogant words from the young man before her, Hu Yarou's face reddened in fury, and she snapped, then there's no way our negotiation can go on. I wish you luck in your endeavor then. Born with both talent and beauty, she was a prideful person. She had always been respected and admired by others, and she'd thought that she was already doing the other party a favor by offering to take him in as her servant. Yet, that fellow turned her down so haughtily. He would regret his decision. After saying that piece, she turned around, and with a step, she soared into the distance. Exerting her strength as a transcendent mortal 9-Dan chrysalis realm expert, she swiftly disappeared from the view of the duo. In truth, the bewitching devil faction was one of the larger student factions in the Master Teacher Academy. As its leader, she had no lack of academic credits or spirit stones. The reason she wanted Zhongxian to join them or to serve as her servant was because he had embarrassed all of the seniors with his previous deed. If she could make him submit to her, her reputation would surely soar amidst the student populace. However, that fellow didn't know what was good for him. Since the other party had already rejected her so bluntly, there was no room for negotiation. After Hu Yaoyao left, Luo Chichi turned to Zhongxian and said, "She is the leader of the bewitching devil faction, and I heard that she spent a great deal of effort compiling the information in the teacher information documentation. Yet, her effort ended up in vain, so it's inevitable that she carries some hostility toward you. She was intentionally trying to humiliate you, so there is no need to take it to heart." "Don't worry, I won't." Zhongxian smiled. "But with this, we have reached an impasse. All right, leave this to me. I will find a way to make her spit out the location of Elder Wu Yang's old residence obediently." "Leave it to you?" Luo Chichi frowned. "Hu Yaoyao is an extremely prideful and cunning person. It won't be easy to make her speak." In the past, there had been a handful of people who had attempted to do in Hu Yaoyao, and all of them had ended up paying a heavy price for their actions. Even with her teacher's capability, it wouldn't be easy for him to make Hu Yaoyao reveal the location of Elder Wu Yang's old residence. "Don't worry, wait for me at my residence in the elite sector. I will be back very soon," Zhongxian instructed with a smile before he activated the Eye of Insight and followed Hu Yaoyoro's trail. In any case, he was already in a hostile relationship with the bewitching devil faction. There was no way he could mend the relationship anymore, so perhaps he could attempt another method instead. "Teacher." Seeing Zhongxian pursue Hu Yaoyao, Luo Chichi froze for a moment before yelling, "Senior Yaoyao is a student of the Terpsichore school. She specializes in soul attacks, so you must be careful." However, Zhongxian's figure had already disappeared amidst the night sky. Perhaps, he hadn't heard her words at all. Chapter 766. The price of the origin heavy water. Zhongxian didn't hear Luo Chichi's voice. Executing the red dust heaven ascending step, he flew silently at an altitude close to the ground. His Eye of Insight had grown extremely sharp after undergoing the third acknowledgement of Celestial Master Teacher. Even though Hu Yaoyoro's trail was extremely faint, he could still see it as clear as day. Where is she heading to? Zhongxian was perplexed. The trail first lingered around the lake before abruptly heading for a hill. The hill looked extremely remote, and it seemed unlikely that there would be anyone staying on it. Why would the other party visit this hill at this ungodly hour? Under the concealment of the night, Zhongxian advanced ahead. The hill was filled with many short shrubs, and at its very peak was an octagonal gazebo. There were many of such gazebos throughout the academy. The purpose of it was so that the students could stop by them any time they wished in case they suddenly stumbled upon an enlightenment in their cultivation. Often, inspiration came suddenly and left as abruptly. If one were to miss that moment, one might miss it forever. Sticking close to the greenery, Zhongxian slowly advanced toward the gazebo. Before long, he saw a bewitching figure standing within. Starlight fell upon her blurred silhouette, creating a beautiful painting. From afar, that entrancing profile was reminiscent of a beautiful goddess of the night, rendering it impossible for one to pull his gaze off her. Other than Luo Ruoxin, Zhongxian had never felt anything toward any women before. Nevertheless, he still had to admit that Hu Yaoyao did possess fatal charm. "Isn't it about time for you to come out?" At that instant, the entrancing figure abruptly spoke up, breaking the silence of the night. "Did she notice me?" Zhongxian jolted in astonishment, but soon, he shook his head. In order to not leave a trail behind him, he had executed the red dust heaven ascending step to remain floating in the air. On top of that, he had been keeping a safe distance from Hu Yaoyao, following her only by her faint trails through the Eye of Insight. With all of the safety precautions he had taken, it would be difficult for even a Saint Realm expert to notice his presence. The next moment, resounding laughter suddenly erupted. Ha ha, Yao Yao sure is sharp. I only arrived just a moment ago, but you have already noticed me. With the sound of the wind, a tall figure suddenly emerged from the other end of the hill and leaped into the gazebo. Judging from his appearance, he seemed to be in his early 30s. His aura felt powerful, reminiscent of a torrential river. Just like Hu Yaro, he was a transcendent mortal 9-dan expert as well. Upon reaching such a realm, it was already impossible to discern the other party's age through their outer appearance. He might look like he was in his 30s on the outside, but chances were that he was already in his 50s or 60s. Even so, given the lifespan of 200 years for a transcendent mortal, he could be considered to be young. Before Hu Yaro could speak, another faint voice sounded by the side, and yet another figure walked into the gazebo. As a cultivator of the true Audio's art, your presence feels like the searing sun in the sky. How can anyone possibly miss that? It was a lady as well. She seemed to be of the same age as Hu Yaro, and she possessed a beauty not paling to the latter. However, the dispositions they commanded were the complete opposite of one another. As if a succubus, every single movement and gesture from Hu Yaro would tug at one's heartstrings, leaving one tempted to make her their own. On the other hand, the other lady had an aura of poise and indifference. Despite her beauty, the coldness she exuded left others standing a distance away, not daring to get close. True Audio's art. Could that man be the leader of the true Audio's faction, Shui Zhenyang? Zhong Xian thought as he looked at the two new figures in the gazebo. He had heard by chance that the leader of the true Audio's faction was a grade 5 student named Shui Zhenyang, so he immediately thought of the other party. Just as Zhong Xian was deep in thought, another figure stepped into the gazebo. Indeed, that fellow sure doesn't know how to conceal himself. Otherwise, Yaro wouldn't have noticed him so easily. It was as if that figure was a specter of the darkness. If he hadn't talked, not even Zhong Xian would have noticed him. It seemed as if he had just materialized out of nowhere. Long Tsungyue, you might be able to tread silently in the night due to your frigid moon art, but you ended up making yourself neither a man nor a woman. Don't even compare yourself with me, Shui Zhenyang harumphed. You are the one who is neither a man nor a woman. Are you asking for a beating? The young man named Long Tsungyue flew into a rage. Do you think I will be afraid of you? Come. It has been too long since I have been able to work those joints of mine. Shui Zhenyang drove the zhenqi in his body, and the next moment, an aura reminiscent of flames gathered around him as he prepared to make an attack. Ha, a defeated loser dares to speak so haughtily to me. Since a fight is what you want, a fight is what you'll get. Long Tsungyue sneered coldly. In an instant, a tense atmosphere weighed down between the duo. Enough. To fight right after meeting one another, can't the both of you tone down a little? Don't you know we have some important matters to discuss tonight? Hu Yaro harumphed in displeasure. Along with her words, the tense atmosphere gradually dissipated. The duo harumphed coldly and said, "Humph, I guess we can fight on another occasion. For now, we should discuss about the matter we have at hand. Since everyone is gathered. Dong Xin, you can start now." With the duo toning it down, Hu Yaro turned her gaze to the other lady of the group and gestured for her to begin. The cold-faced lady, Dong Xin, paused for a brief moment before reporting, "Okay. I went to that place and observed it for 2 days. Just as Zhenyang has said, I am certain that the item exists. However, the difficulty in obtaining it seems to be greater than our initial estimates. I fear that it will be hard to succeed with just the 4 of us. Indeed, it won't be easy for us to succeed. Putting aside the difficult geographical terrain where the place is located, those 2 fellows guarding it are also beyond our capability," Shui Zhenyang said with a frown. "We will have to ensure that our plan is foolproof, or else we might potentially end up losing our lives there," Long Tsungyue added. "Ensure that our plan is foolproof? Do we have the time to do so? If I recall correctly, that item is going to be ripe in just a month's time, and the moment it happens, those 2 fellows will surely consume it to refine their bones and meridians. By then, we will have lost our opportunity to get it." Shui Zhenyang flung his sleeves and harumphed. Zhenyang is right, We won't have a chance if we don't act decisively. We have to get to it before it ripens and obtain it as soon as it happens. Otherwise, if we lose this opportunity, it will take us at least several dozen years of hard work in order to reach Half-Saint. Hu Yarrow nodded with a frown. We all understand that logic, but the problem lies with how we can breach the defense of those two huge fellows. Shui Zhenyang shook his head before turning the cold-faced young lady. Dong Xin, you are famed genius of the beast tamer school. Do you have any idea how we can deal with those two fellows? Those two fellows possess the ancient bloodline, so it will be hard to distract them with ordinary items. Didn't I tell you all to purchase some origin heavy water before I went to scout? That item has the effect of purifying the ancient bloodline, so it might work as a bait against them. As long as we can distract them momentarily, we might be able to get to the fruit, Dong Xin said before turning the group to ask, so, have you bought it yet? How can we possibly have the money to buy it? A single bottle of it costs more than 100,000 middle-tier spirit stones. It is not like you don't know how much money we have at hand. Shui Zhenyang replied with a bitter smile. Even as grade 5 students, it was still hard for them to fork out 100,000 middle-tier spirit stones at once. Origin heavy water? Hearing those words, Zhong Xian's heart suddenly leaped in agitation. In total, there were 5 dans to the quintuple incandescence golden body. Even though he'd fused many physical body cultivation techniques with it, he still needed 4 items to serve as a catalyst to cultivate the last 4 dans. The third incandescence happened to require the origin heavy water. However, Zhong Xian had known its name before. Regarding its appearance or where he could find it, he had no idea whatsoever. He'd never thought that he would receive news about it from the mouths of these people. It seemed like they were intending to purchase the origin heavy water, 100,000 middle-tier spirit stones. That is equivalent to 10 high-tier spirit stones. My, how expensive it is, Zhong Xian exclaimed in frustration within. Based on his understanding of the quintuple incandescence golden body, if he wanted to fully cultivate the third incandescence, he would at least require 10 bottles of the origin heavy water. However, he only had 10 high-tier spirit stones at the moment, which was far from sufficient for him to obtain enough of it. Hearing Shui Zhenyang's complaint, Dong Xin asked, "Didn't a new batch of freshmen arrive just a few days ago? I thought you all would have made a killing there." The student factions of the academy would usually be able to earn substantial wealth for themselves whenever new students arrived in the academy. On top of that, this was the once-in-decade massive intake of the academy, and according to the rumors she had heard, there should be 30,000 freshmen this year. With so many of them, even if they were to earn just 3 middle-tier spirit stones from each of them, they would still easily scrape together 100,000. Make a killing? We even made a loss, you know. Haven't you heard of that matter 2 days ago? Long Tsungyue shook his head in frustration. Heard of what? I came here as soon as I could to deliver this news to you all, so I haven't heard anything yet. What happened? Did the academy interfere in the matter? Dong Xin asked bewilderedly. She had spent the past few days in that area in order to gather intelligence for their operation. As a result, she had only returned earlier that night, so she wasn't too sure about the happenings in the academy. However, it was a convention for the senior to exploit the freshmen, and the academy had never interfered with it in previous years. There shouldn't have been any reason for them to do it that year. Besides, the practice had its merits as well. Firstly, it could dampen the conceit that most freshmen came in with, teaching them that there was always a mountain higher than the other. Secondly, participating in a faction also served as a social platform for master teachers to interact and coordinate with one another, which helped them to build camaraderie to deal with the otherworldly demons if the time ever came. Since the academy didn't interfere in this matter and the freshmen had no choice but to step right into their scam, the various factions should have been able to earn a substantial sum. But if that was the case, why did the others look as if they had made a loss instead? A freak amidst the freshmen wrecked our entire business. The entrance examination this year was conducted by your beast tamer school, so you should know some details regarding it, right? Long Tsungyue said. Yes. Dong Xin nodded. It was conducted by Elder Mo, and he started preparing for it since several months ago. As a genius of the Beast Tamer School, she had a close relationship with most of the teachers and elders there. As such, she had been let in on the matter regarding the entrance examination even before it had been announced. In preparation for the examination, Elder Mo had been going around capturing malicious spirit beasts, and Dong Xin had helped capture a few of them herself as well. The rules of the entrance examination this time around are rather simple. Obtain the inner core of a transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle spirit beast, and you will obtain 1 point. Do you know how many points that freak of a freshman earned? Long Tsungyue asked. It had been several days since the freshman examination had finished. As the leader of the Ashen Moon faction, it wasn't too difficult for him to gather some intelligence regarding the happenings there. Chapter 767, I saw Zhongxian how many? Looking at the look of disbelief on the other party's face, Dongxin couldn't help but feel a little curious at how well the freshman did. Since he is a freshman, his cultivation should probably be at Consonant Spirit Realm Pinnacle. Even if he were to make the breakthrough to Cosmos Bridge Realm, it would already be an incredible feat for him to kill 3 Consonant Spirit Realm Pinnacle Spirit Beasts within a single day. 3 of them would give him 120 points. Could his score have exceeded 1,000? A Consonant Spirit Realm Pinnacle Spirit Beast was worth 40 points. It was already rather formidable for one to slay 3 spirit beasts of the same cultivation realm as one in a single day. Even if one were to multiply that by 10, that would only be 1,200 points. Scoring 1,200 points was indeed an incredible feat for a freshman, but surely it wouldn't produce such a look of disbelief on the face of the leader of the Ashen Moon faction. Hearing those words, Long Tsungyue scoffed. 1,000 points? If it was only that much, would I need to be so shocked? Let me tell you this straight, he obtained a grand total of 43,724 points. How many did you say? 43,000 points. Hearing those words, Dongxin nearly fainted on the spot. She had participated in the capture of those spirit beasts, so she knew how difficult it was to locate and hunt them down. On top of that, they had targeted the aggressive spirit beasts who had a record of hurting others, and they were far more difficult to deal with than the spirit beasts enclosed in a cage. Every single of them was incredibly cunning, and a lapse in one's concentration could easily lead to one's death. Yet, a freshman had actually obtained more than 40,000 points in such an examination. Wasn't this joke a little too much? How many spirit beasts must he have killed to obtain such a result? Could he have single-handedly slaughtered every last spirit beast in the mountain? That's not all. The points he obtained weren't from killing the spirit beasts, but by taming them, Long Tsungyue added. Taming them? Dongxin exclaimed sharply. Taming a spirit beast was far more difficult than killing one. Even her, a renowned genius of the Beast Tamer School, would have to spend several months or even years in order to achieve the required intimacy to tame one. Yet, to tame multiple spirit beasts in a day. Not to mention, enough of them to obtain 40,000 points. Just how many spirit beasts in the world did he tame? Seeing Dongxin's expression, Long Tsungyue could tell what she was thinking, so he said, he tamed more than 400 spirit beasts. Furthermore, according to the accounts from the dozens of eyewitnesses in the area, he did it within just 2 hours. 2 hours. Dongxin couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. Even she didn't have the ability to do the same. It's this incredible feat that won him School Head Mo's favor, and School Head Mo offered to take him in as his disciple, Long Tsungyue said. Take him in as his disciple? School Head Mo? Dongxin was stunned. All along, she had been working hard in the hope that her effort could catch School Head Mo's eye. However, School Head Mo never seemed to notice her. As a result, she'd thought that School Head Mo had no intention of accepting any disciple at all. Who knew that he would end up favoring a freshman over her? That's right. However, what is the most unbelievable thing about this matter is that the fellow actually rejected the offer. Long Tsungyue's eyes flew around the place. The first time he heard of that news, he had also been rendered dumbfounded. To actually reject School Head Mo, one of the 10 great master teachers. He sure was gutsy. At this moment, Dongxin felt as though she had been struck by lightning. Countless students in the academy were vying to become school head Mo's student, and yet that fellow actually rejected the offer. Did he have a screw loose somewhere? That's not all, there is still more to come. After that fellow heard many people had failed the examination, he gave away his points away to them so that they could all clear the examination. Long Tsungyue said. Gave away his points. Dongxin widened her eyes in astonishment as her body swayed weakly from side to side. The points one obtains in the entrance examination can be used to trade for academic credits. Given his accomplishment in the examination, he could easily have received 10 academic credit. Even if he has no interest in academic credits, he could easily apply for 20 high-tier spirit stones from the academy with his score. And yet, he gave them away. The points could be traded for academic credits and high-tier spirit stone. Upon hearing those words, Zhongxian nearly spewed blood from his mouth. If he'd known that those points could be traded for academic credits and high-tier spirit stones, he would have never idled around in the entrance examination. He would have surely rushed around the mountain, taming and killing as many spirit beasts as he could. At the very least, he would have strived for 1,000,000 points. Or if it came down to it, he could even have handed the Byzantium Alios beast over. Consonant Spirit Realm spirit beasts were worth 10 points, Cosmos Bridge Realm spirit beasts were worth 100 points, Perfect Harmonization Realm spirit beasts were worth 1,000 points, Ethereal Treading Realm spirit beasts were worth 10,000 points, Chrysalis Realm spirit beasts were worth 100,000 points, Half-Saint beasts were worth 1,000,000 points, Nascent Saint beasts were worth 10,000,000 points. Then a Saint beast should be worth at least 100,000,000 points, right? Furthermore, that fellow was at Saint Wundan Pinnacle, which meant 400,000,000 points. Calculating by proportion, wouldn't that mean that he could receive 100,000 academic credits or 200,000 high-tier spirit stones from the academy? Regret dyed Zhongxian's guts green. One, if he had that many academic credits and high-tier spirit stones, would there be anywhere that he couldn't go? He would be able to make his round through all of the libraries in the academy, and perhaps, he might already be on his way to a conferred empire now. I will look for Elder Mo later. Perhaps, I might still be able to exchange the Byzantium Alios beast for some academic credits. Zhongxian thought about the matter for an instant before eventually shaking his head. But putting aside the fact that the entrance examination is already over, which means that the academy has the right to refuse to give me the corresponding academic credits and high-tier spirit stones, even if I am able to do so, I won't be able to explain to them how I managed to capture the Byzantium Alios beast. On top of that, it would reveal my possession of the otherworldly demon puppets. It would be impossible for him to explain the presence of the otherworldly demon puppets at the moment, and even if he could, they were currently his greatest trump card, so it would be unwise for him to reveal their existence as well. Thus, even though it was a huge shame, Zhongxian still decided to drop the matter in the end. To be honest, even I can't help but be in awe of how generous that fellow is. Long Tsungyue continued. But that still isn't all. When you hear what he did afterward, you will surely go mad. Oh! Suppressing her shock, Dongxin turned to look at Long Tsungyue. On the other hand, Hu Yaoyao and Xue Zhenyang were listening to the conversation between the duo silently. Judging from the looks of helplessness on their faces, it was likely that they had long heard of it. Shortly after clearing the entrance examination, that fellow headed to the blacksmith school, and God knows what he did, but he destroyed the entire passageway of records along with half of the blacksmith guild. Long Tsungyue revealed. Passageway of records. Blacksmith guild. Dongxin gasped in shock. Vice school head Yuan didn't kill him for that. As one of the senior students of the academy, she was aware of vice school head's austere and fiery temper. He expected students to abide by the rules strictly, and he tolerated zero nonsense from others. To destroy the passageway of records along with half of the entire blacksmith guild. He should be glad that vice school head Yuan didn't strangle him to death on the spot. Kill him? I also thought that would be the case as well when I heard about it. But not only did vice school head spare Zhongxian, he even treated him with the utmost politeness and led him to the ocean of weapons personally to take the blacksmith examination. And that fellow, within 4 hours within the ocean of weapons, progressed from a mere apprentice to become a 6-star blacksmith. Long Tsungyue said. What did you say? Within 4 hours, he took the 1-star examination all the way to the 6-star examination. Dongxin's mouth slowly widened in shock. No words could explain what she was feeling at the moment. That fellow's previous deeds were incredible, but it was at least remotely possible. The world was huge, and there were all kinds of incredible geniuses out there. They weren't so arrogant as to think that they would be the top of the world. But what the heck was with clearing the 1-star to 6-star examination within 4 hours? More importantly, the prerequisite to taking the 6-star examination was for one's cultivation to reach transcendent mortal 9-dan chrysalis realm. This wasn't just a condition imposed by the Blacksmith Guild, but that it was fundamentally impossible for a cultivator beneath that cultivation realm to clear the examination. For one, the purity and quantity of their zhenqi would be insufficient to evoke the heat in the flames, making it impossible for them to melt most ores that 6-star blacksmiths were expected to process. Are you sure you aren't messing with me? That matter alarmed school head Zhao, and he insisted on taking that fellow in as his teacher's student, or in other words, his junior. But that fellow rejected it yet again. Long Tsungyue could clearly perceive the disbelief in Dongxin's eyes, but it was all the truth. Many had witnessed Zhongxian's deeds in the blacksmith school, and as the leaders of the largest student factions in the academy, it wouldn't be too difficult for them to verify the authenticity of the news. School head Mo offered to take him in as his disciple, and school head Zhao offered to acknowledge him as his junior, but they were rejected. Swallowing a mouthful of saliva, Dongxin fell into deep thought for a few moments before lifting her gaze to ask, "That freshman is indeed a formidable figure, but what does he have to do with the issue regarding the finances of the student factions?" Thinking about it now, they had been talking about the lack of money in their student factions just a moment ago when the topic had suddenly shifted to that fellow. Could that freshman be responsible for the student faction's business failure? As you know, the main source of income of student factions during the start of the term is from the sales of the teacher information documentation to the incoming freshmen, but somehow, that fellow managed to obtain an even more accurate and detailed version of it and gave it away for free. With that, who else would buy ours? Not only so, our reputations were even dragged down into the gutters. Quite a few freshmen who were intending to join our factions ended up backing out due to that scandal. Long Tsungyue explained with a hint of fury in his voice. That matter had caused significant losses to his Ashen Moon faction, so he'd ordered an investigation into the culprit of the affair, Zhongxian. Who could have known that the results of the investigation would be so baffling? If it had been any other freshman, he would have stomped right up to them and given them a good pummeling so as to beat the rules into their bones. But this fellow, how could he dare to touch a person whom school head Mo and school head Zhao favored? Not expecting such a situation, Dongxin was at a loss for words. But indeed, if there was a free and better version, who would want to waste 100 middle-tier spirit stones on their document? Then, don't any of you have a way to deal with him? What can we possibly do against that fellow? His cultivation might not be too high, but he has the backing of 2 of the 10 great master teachers. Unless you wish to offend those 2, there is hardly anything we can do about him. Since all of us are gathered here today, let's discuss that matter as well. Long Tsungyue sighed deeply as he turned his gaze to the group. Not only did he spoil our market, his actions also sullied our reputations as well. We have to punish him or else we might risk losing our authority amongst the student populace. Indeed, we can't let him go that easily. Xue Zhenyang narrowed his eyes and harumphed. So, do you 2 have any ideas yet? Dongxin asked. This. Long Tsungyue and Xue Zhenyang glanced at one another and smiled bitterly. School head Mo and school head Zhao were 2 gigantic barriers standing in the way of their vengeance, and there was hardly any way they could circumvent them. If they really had an idea in mind, they would have long carried it out. Would they still allow Zhongxian to get off scot-free even to this day? At this moment, Hu Yaro suddenly spoke up with a soft chuckle. Speaking of that fellow, I met him today. You met him? The others immediately turned their sights to Hu Yaro. Even though they had nearly died from shock due to the many rumors they had heard regarding Zhongxian, none of them had been fortunate enough to meet him yet. The other party had caused a huge storm right from the moment he'd enrolled at the academy, so they hadn't had the chance to see his appearance for themselves yet. Yes. I believe you all should know the genius of the grade 2 students, Luo Chichi, right? Asked Hu Yaro as she glanced at them. Of course, Dongxin replied. Luo Chichi had been enrolled at the academy for barely a year, but she had already advanced from 4-star pinnacle to 5-star low tier. Such speed was astounding even when taking into consideration the innumerable geniuses that had come before her in the academy. Possessing both looks and talent, it was inevitable that they would be aware of her. I saw her together with Zhongxian earlier, and she had addressed him as her teacher, Hu Yaro said. Teacher? Luo Chichi addressed him as her teacher? You. Are you sure you aren't pulling our legs? Luo Chichi has a mysterious background, and it is rumored that she is the princess from some empire. I have tried looking into her background myself, but I wasn't able to uncover anything substantial about her either. A person like that actually acknowledged a freshman as her teacher? Long Tsungyue, Xue Zhenyang, and the others could hardly believe their ears. Chapter 768, Terpsichore School. It is not the aged but the skilled who becomes the teacher. This has always been how we master teachers work. Considering how Luo Chichi was willing to address him as her teacher without the slightest indignation in her voice, it can only mean that he possesses ability surpassing her significantly in certain aspects, Hu Yaro said. There was no human who could possibly be skilled in all aspects. Even the most formidable of cultivators had their own weaknesses. As a result, there were cases where a higher-ranked master teacher acknowledged a lower-ranked master teacher as their teacher. Even Empyrean Kong Shi had sought guidance from Tan Shi, an inconspicuous 5-star master teacher from the remote Tan Kingdom. Understanding this fact, the others nodded in agreement. After which, Dongxin asked, since you have met him, what is your evaluation of him? Are there any flaws he has that we can exploit against him? We barely traded a few words, so I am unable to make a complete evaluation of his character. Nevertheless, based on what I have seen so far, he seems to be an honest and upright person. It doesn't seem like he will do anything against his principles. However, if there is one flaw I have to name about him, it will be that his words are infuriating, Hu Yaro said. Even though she was a 6-star low-tier master teacher, she was still unable to discern anything significant about Zhongxian. The only thing that she came out of the encounter with was her raging fury from the other party's words. His words are infuriating. The others blinked in surprise. To make a person like Hu Yaro, who could take most things in her stride, angry, that fellow was indeed a genius in some ways. After a moment of contemplation, Hu Yaro added, oh, right. That fellow seems to be interested in the old residents of Wu Yangzi. I feel that we can use this as a leverage against him to teach him a lesson. Even though the competition among the 4 of their factions was rather rife, perhaps due to mutual respect for one another, the 4 of them were surprisingly on relatively good terms. Wu Yangzi's old residents. It's good that he has something that he desires. We should be able to use it against him. Why don't we give him a false location and set up a trap there so as to teach him a lesson? This way, we might be able to pull him out of School Head Mo and School Head Zhao's notice to teach him a lesson. Xue Zhenyang's eyes glowed in excitement. The years of cultivating the true Aelio's art had slowly shaped his personality to be more forceful and decisive. If it was something he could resolve easily with brute force, he wouldn't hesitate to do so. That isn't safe. If he were to report the matter to School Head Mo and the others afterward, we will surely be punished for it. We have to find a way to make him suffer without having him speaking about it. In order to do so, it will be best if we can find something to threaten him with so that he won't dare speak of it, Long Tsungyue said. Unlike Xue Zhenyang's straightforward personality, Long Tsungyue tended to be more thorough and scheming in his actions. Since Zhongxian was favored by School Head Mo and School Head Zhao, it would be safe to assume that they would be inclined to protect him if something happened. Thus, they had to be careful when dealing with him, or else they would suffer 2 of the 10 great master teachers' wrath, and that wasn't a joking matter at all. Thus, the only way it would be safe for them to strike was to obtain some kind of material they could blackmail him with, so that even if they were to make him to suffer, he wouldn't dare speak up about it. A thought came to Dongxin's mind, and her eyes lit up. Something to threaten him with. That is indeed a good idea. Yao Yao, you are better than us with such matters. I recall there are quite a few students who have crossed the bewitching devil faction over the past few years, and while they ended up suffering immensely for their actions, none of them dared to speak up about it. Hu Yaoiro's reputation in the academy was resounding. This wasn't just due to her incredible talent in cultivation and her beauty, but for her unconventional means in dealing with problems as well. There were many master teachers who had challenged her authority in the past, but she had managed to resolve them beautifully while giving the other party the humiliation of their life. Now that you speak of it, I do have an idea in mind. Doesn't that fellow like to sell others his favor? Since that's the case, why don't I drag his reputation down to his gutters and let him understand the price of offending me? Hu Yao Yao. A sharp glint flashed across Hu Yaoiro's dark eyes as a chilling smile crept onto her face. And that Luo Chichi as well. It seems like she cares for her teacher quite a fair bit. If she were to learn how shameless and immoral her teacher is, let's see if she will still be able to respect him as before. Knowing that Hu Yaoyao would never say anything she was unconfident of, the eyes of the others lit up in excitement. Leave this matter to me. However, I want an additional share of that item for dealing with that fellow. This request of mine isn't too much, isn't it? Hu Yaoyao said. An additional share. Fine. As long as you can deal with that fellow, we will give you an additional share. The others nodded in agreement. That's good. For the time being, you should focus your efforts on acquiring the origin heavy water. We'll set off once the preparations are ready. As for Zhongxian, just wait for the good news. As long as he wants to know the location of Wu Yang's old residence, he will have no choice but to obey my commands obediently, Hu Yaoyao said as her lips curled up. Obey her commands obediently? It seems like she has some plan up her sleeves. Zhongxian thought. Considering how confident Hu Yaoyao sounded, it seemed she had already found a sure-kill way to deal with him. Zhongxian mused over the various possibilities for a moment, but without anything else for him to work with, it was impossible for him to determine the other party's next course of action. Thus, he could only give up in the end. If the other party was going to go after him, he would just have to deal with it accordingly when the time came. At the very least, he did know of the other party's intentions, so he wouldn't be caught completely off guard when something happened. After Hu Yaoyao and the others were done negotiating, they swiftly left the gazebo and flitted down the hill. Only after ensuring that everyone was gone did Zhongxian finally stand up. Even though I know that she means me harm, I still have to get the location of Wu Yang's old residence out of her. After a moment of hesitation, Zhongxian eventually decided to follow Hu Yaoyao. He activated the Eye of Insight and hurried off in the direction the latter had departed in. As for the treasure which Hu Yaoyao and the others seemed to be targeting, that had nothing to do with him, so he had no intentions in getting involved either. As for the heavy origin water, since he knew that it was possible to procure it with high-tier spirit stones in Hongyuan City, he would just have to earn sufficient money to purchase it in the future. Thus, the only thing left for him to do was to find Wu Yang's old residence. Considering Wu Yang's prestige and standing in Hongyuan City back then, it was likely that his treasure would hold great wealth. Thus, as long as Zhongxian could lay his hands on it, he would not need to worry about having insufficient funds for his cultivation anymore. Following Hu Yaoiro's trail, he soon arrived at a vast courtyard. There are so many ladies here. As Zhongxian slowly crept within manor, he soon realized that something was amiss. For some reason, the number of female students in this manor was disproportionately higher than the male students. Furthermore, each and every one of them had an elegant figure and beautiful face. While they were unable to compete with top beauties in the academy such as Hu Yaoyao and Luo Chichi, the charm that they exuded would still be irresistible for most men. The number of male master teachers had always been higher than the number of female master teachers, yet the number of female master teachers here far exceeded the male master teachers. Zhongxian found the situation before him completely bizarre. The density of people increased the further Zhongxian progressed, so he had no choice but to slow down in order to avoid detection. It was fortunate that he possessed the Eye of Insight, allowing him to clearly discern the actions of others and take precautions in advance. On top of that, He possessed the Heaven's Path Zhenqi and Red Dust Heaven Ascending Step, allowing him to move discreetly without alarming others. An hour later, following the trail, Zhongxian soon found himself penetrating into the depths of the manor. Shinru, keep watch for me outside. I will be preparing some things, and I don't want to be interrupted. After advancing a moment longer, Zhongxian suddenly a crisp voice ahead of him. It was Hu Yaoiro's voice. He swiftly rushed to hide behind a huge tree in the vicinity. Following the source of the voice, he saw Hu Yaoyaro standing right before a room. Yes, the lady named Shinru replied with a nod. Shinru was a young lady in her 20s, and she possessed an exceptional figure and beauty as well. Is Hu Yaoyaro intending to prepare her hand to deal with me? Having eavesdropped on the conversation among Hu Yaoyaro, Shui Zhenyang, Long Tsungyue, and Dong Xin, he knew that Hu Yaoyaro was intending to deal with him. This might be a good opportunity to see what the other party was up to so that he could come up with a suitable countermeasure for it. With such a thought in mind, Zhongxian slowly flew to the top of the room which Hu Yaoyaro was standing before. His movements were as light as a feather, leaving no sound whatsoever. Hu. After landing on the roof, he gently pried open one of the brick tiles above and peeked down. Just as his gaze fell into the room, Hu Yaoyaro stepped into the room as well. Under the warm glow of the many night illumination pearls embedded in the room, Hu Yaoyaro could be seen dressed in a crimson silk robe, which further accentuated her perfect figure. Her smooth white skin, long and slender neck, exquisitely shaped earlobes, silky pitch-black hair. No matter how one looked at her, Hu Yaoyaro was like a bewitching devil that one couldn't avert one's gaze from. Voila! Just as Zhongxian was staring intently to see what Hu Yaoyaro was up to, the other party abruptly walked up to her bedframe and gently pulled at the knot by her waist. The crimson robe she was wearing immediately slipped down her body, revealing her pristine skin. From top to bottom, there was not a single piece of cloth on her. Her beautiful figure lay bare in the room. Zhongxian was speechless. He'd thought that the other party would prepare some kind of artifact or trap to deal with him, so he'd climbed onto the roof to peek on the other party, hoping that he could perhaps use this to blackmail her into revealing Wu Yang's old residence. Who knew that the other party would strip off her clothes as soon as she returned to the room? This was way too weird. The sky had darkened just a moment ago, so she couldn't possibly be intending to go to sleep. But if that was the case, why was she taking off her clothes? He truly couldn't understand what was going on in that woman's head. Never mind, I shouldn't look any further. Knowing that his actions would be nothing but despicable if he were to continue peeking, he decisively placed the roof tile back. If he were to be branded as a perverted peeping Tom because of this matter, that would be truly unfortunate. Just the thought of it sent shivers down his spine. Hu Yaoyoro's room was situated at the highest point in the area, and it was the largest one as well. Sitting on its roof, he could easily see everything in the other courtyards. In a few of them, he saw a few ladies dressed in resplendent outfits moving about. Their elegant garments and their bewitching movements left him in an entranced state with just a single glance. It was only after driving his zhenqi that Zhongxian finally recovered, and he immediately fell into deep contemplation. Could this be the Terpsichore school? The fact that they were able to make him momentarily lose his senses through their dancing meant that their gestures carried the ability to beguile souls, and the only occupation in the academy that was capable of such a feat was Terpsichore. This also explained why this manor consisted mainly of women as well. It will be awkward for me to remain here considering that Hu Yaoyaro is naked inside. But since I am already at the Terpsichore school, I might as well pay their library a visit so that I don't make this trip a waste. Knowing that it would be suspicious for him to remain here, Zhongxian decided to postpone the matter for the moment and visit the library so as to deal with his innate fetal poison. Having made up his mind, Zhongxian activated his eye of insight and began scanning his surroundings. Soon, his gaze fell on a towering building in the distance. 3 elegantly calligraphed words, carrying both elegance and an historic aura, came into sight: Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion. I should go over to take a look. With eyes gleaming with excitement, Zhongxian flitted off into the darkness. Chapter 769, Night at the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion. The Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion was large and majestic, standing tall and conspicuous even amidst the deep darkness of the night. In several breaths, Zhongxian landed on the branch of a large tree just outside the building. The libraries of the academy require a student token and academic credits to enter. Zhongxian scratched his head in distress. He'd thought that he would be able to access the library freely as a student of the academy, but based on what he saw at the entrance of the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion, that didn't seem to be the case. Just like the ocean of weapons in the blacksmith school, the doors to the libraries could only open by scanning one student token and paying the required amount of academic credits. Unfortunately, Zhongxian had neither of the two, so it was impossible for him to enter. If he were to attempt to barge in and trigger some kind of protective formation due to it, he might even attract the attention of the school's elders, bringing himself trouble. But I am already here. Am I to return empty-handed? Zhongxian muttered in frustration. The matter regarding his innate fetal poison could not wait. His goal was just standing before him, and if he were to return just like that, he might possibly regret it for life. Wait. The mechanisms and formations protecting the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion are indeed useful against cultivators, but can it block off souls? After all, souls are intangible existences, rendering most mechanisms and formations ineffective against them. Perhaps, I might be able to enter the premises this way. Zhongxian thought. Based on Zhongxian's analysis, it seemed like the formations and mechanisms around the library could only sense tangible beings. As such, it might be possible for him to sneak in as a soul. Furthermore, while he could only duplicate books in the Library of Heaven's Path by touching them in the past, with the new upgrades it had just undergone, he could replicate them just by laying his eyes on them. In other words, even with just his soul, he could gather every single book in the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion into the Library of Heaven's Path easily. Let me give it a try. The more Zhongxian thought about it, the more excited he became by the idea. Thus, he hid his body well amidst dense shrubs before drawing his soul out. As if an apparition of the night, his soul gradually approached the tightly shut doors of the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion silently. At its entrance, he saw several students standing guard to keep away intruders. Despite the intangible nature of souls, they were still bound by the laws of the world. One of the manifestations of such a phenomenon was their inability to pass through concrete walls, and unfortunately for Zhongxian, the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion was made of an airtight material which prevented even souls from slipping through. Just as he was contemplating about how he could enter, he suddenly heard footsteps behind him as a figure approached the doors of the library. The figure walked up to the doors and bowed deeply to the several students at the entrance. Seniors, I would like to access the library to check some information. She was a lady in her 30s, and the master teacher emblem pinned on her chest had 5 stars on it. 5-star low-tier master teacher, she was a grade 2 student. One of the seniors glanced at her and said, "Your student token and academic credits token." Most likely, the seniors standing guard at the entrance were taking this job as a way to earn additional academic credits to finance their expenditure. Yes. The student quickly passed her student token and academic credits token over. A moment later, the senior nodded and said, "You are a grade 2 student, so you can only browse through the books of grade 3 and below. If you attempt to look at any book beyond that tier, you will be expelled from the library immediately. On top of that, you are only given 20 hours of reading time for each academic credit you spend, and you are not allowed to take out any books from the library." Yes. The student nodded in response. As a grade 2 student of the Master Teacher Academy, she was accustomed to the rules of the library. "Okay, you may enter now." After emphasizing on the rules, the senior waved her hand to gesture that the student may pass. Carrying her student token and academic credits token, the student walked up to a stone pedestal in front of the doors and placed them on it. Gia. The doors to the library opened. This is a good opportunity for me to enter as well. Upon seeing a chance to slip into the building, Zhongxian immediately got to action and dived in behind the student as well. After entering the doors, a vast hall immediately appeared before his eyes. The walls were embedded with night illumination pearls of all sizes, making its interiors as bright as day. Shelves of books were positioned orderly in the hall, and the books on them were innumerable. As expected of the Master Teacher Academy, their collection of books is indeed astounding. Zhong Xian's eyes lit up. Terpsichore was one of the more remote occupations, so the number of books on them was severely limited. However, the members of the Master Teacher Academy were all master teachers who had unique insights and had their own understanding of the occupation. Over time, more and more books had been added to the collection, resulting in the impressive compendium that lay before him at this very instant. I should collect them all first and look at them later. Considering the number of books that were in the library, it would take a considerable amount of time if he had to go through them one by one. Zhong Xian's soul moved to the very first bookshelf at the corner and began scanning through them. Floors. Muttering in his head, he could feel that book after book was being replicated in the library of Heaven's Path. It was as if his eyes were scanners, allowing him to replicate the content within books entirely just by laying his eyes on them. This allowed him to copy books at a rate far quicker than he did by running. This is really great, Zhong Xian thought excitedly. Hualala. Books were filling up the shelves in the library of Heaven's Path at an unprecedented rate. 4 hours later, Zhong Xian was finally done taking in all of the books in the hall, and he compiled them into a Heaven's Path manual. On to the second floor. After Zhong Xian was done with the first floor, he proceeded on to the second floor. There were significantly fewer books here than on the first floor, but the content covered within them was more profound. Just like apothecaries and blacksmiths, terpsichores were also ranked from 1 star to 9 star. Contained on the first floor was the basic knowledge regarding dancing from apprentice to 4-star pinnacle, whereas the second floor contained the dancing art and cultivation technique manuals corresponding to 5-star primary terpsichores. Zhong Xian took all of the books on the shelves into the library of Heaven's Path without any hesitation. 2 hours later, he was done collecting the books on the second level. Continuing on. It wasn't easy for him to get into the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion, so it would be a huge shame if he didn't make use of this opportunity to take in as many books as he could. Thus, he hurried off to the third floor. Technically speaking, a grade 1 student was only allowed to browse through the books on the first and second floor. This rule was set by the academy in order to discourage ambitious students from attempting what was far beyond their capability, and various measures were implemented to enforce it. However, while these measures could stop students, they couldn't do the same to souls. With a thought, Zhong Xian's soul turned into a stream that flowed right through the formation, blockading the stairs, and arrived at the next floor. There were even fewer books on the third floor, and Zhong Xian finished them in just an hour. After which, he did the same for the fourth, fifth, and sixth floor. It only took him another 2 hours to collect the books on the remaining 3 floors. In other words, in less than 10 hours, he had made duplicates of the innumerable books in the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion in his head. With a slight smile on his face, Zhong Xian thought in satisfaction, "I will examine them carefully when I return to my residence." He had been thinking that he would have to pay a visit to the Terpsichore school someday to browse through the books, but who could have known that he would accomplish this while following behind Hu Yaro? Furthermore, now that he had learned that he could easily access the libraries in the Master Teacher Academy through his soul, wouldn't he be able to do so for the other schools as well? If that is the case, I should be able to cover all of the books in the 10 schools within 10 days. By then, I would have sufficient books to push my cultivation to higher realms as well, perhaps even reaching Saint Realm. With that, my work at the Master Teacher Academy will be done. Zhong Xian's eyes lit up in agitation. As long as he had sufficient books to compile the Heaven's Path divine art, advancing his cultivation would be as easy as eating and drinking. The main reason he had chosen to enroll in the Master Teacher Academy was so that he could access their trove of books. The upgrade of his library of Heaven's Path had truly come at an ideal time. With this, he would be able to access the knowledge from the various schools as he pleased, and his lack of academic credits wouldn't be an issue anymore. 10 days should be enough for him to cover everything in the Master Teacher Academy. After compiling them into the respective Heaven's Path manuals, he would be able to make a breakthrough both in his cultivation and Master Teacher ranking. Just the thought of advancing 6 realms, the Perfect Harmonization Realm, Void Treading Realm, Chrysalis Realm, Half Saint, Nascent Saint, and Saint realm and bringing the 10 supporting occupations to 6-star pinnacle left his heart trembling in excitement. I should go through the terpsichore books first. However, Zhongxian knew that it wouldn't be as simple as that. Thus, shrugging the thought off with a smile, he turned his consciousness back to the Library of Heaven's Path. New Heaven's Path terpsichorean art manuals appeared before his eyes. There was a total of 6 of them, consisting of books from 1-star to 6-star. Let me see if the portions regarding souls. Zhongxian turned his gaze outside swiftly and noticed that the sun was already setting. It didn't seem like there would be sufficient time for him to learn the entire Heaven's Path terpsichorean art, so he chose to focus his attention on those regarding souls instead. Voila! On Zhongxian's will, the books regarding soul cultivation flew from the shelves and gathered in front of him. Compile. He commanded silently, and yet another book appeared before him. This was the book that could potentially suppress the innate fetal poison in his soul. Unable to suppress his agitation, Zhongxian immediately started browsing through it. It didn't take long for him to finish reading it all. By then, his face was already looking incredibly awful. These are only methods to strengthen one's soul, and they aren't even complete. They won't be much help in dealing with the innate fetal poison. The books he had collected were sufficient to form a Heaven's Path manual, but it was only effective in strengthening one's soul. Against the innate fetal poison, it was nearly completely useless. In other words, after all the effort he had put in that night, he didn't have a way counter the innate fetal poison to alleviate the threat he was under yet. What do I do now? Zhongxian thought frustratedly. To him, the most urgent matter at hand was to suppress the innate fetal poison in his soul. Otherwise, if the innate fetal poison was triggered on a whim, that might very well be the day he would breathe his last breath. He'd thought that, given the nature of the terpsichore occupation, the terpsichores would possess a deep understanding of souls, and he might be able to find a solution to his problems here. But it seemed like he was being too naive. If the innate fetal poison could be dealt with that easily, Empyrean Kongsha wouldn't have to rush all the way to become a 9-star master teacher to resolve it properly. He would have long found a solution before then. Nevertheless, these methods are still effective in building up the resilience of one's soul. I should try to compile them with the soul oracle techniques and see if I can perfect them. The soul cultivation techniques he had obtained from Mo Hunsheng ranged from Transcendent Mortal 1 Dan to 9 Dan, but he didn't have enough books to complete them then. Perhaps, if he were to fuse these books together with them, he might be able to compile new Heaven's Path Soul Art manuals. Currently, the strongest Heaven's Path Soul Art manual he had was still at Consonant Spirit Realm, so his soul cultivation was still capped there as well. With the new books he had gathered, it was worth giving it a shot. Compile. Zhongxian tried putting the books together with his soul cultivation technique manuals. Hula. 2 new books appeared before Zhongxian's gaze. He swiftly grabbed them and flipped them open. These are the Cosmos Bridge Realm and Perfect Harmonization Realm soul cultivation techniques. There are no flaws at all. They have reached the level of Heaven's Path. Looking at the content of the books, Zhongxian nearly burst out laughing out of sheer delight. He'd thought that his trip had been a wasted one, but who would have thought that he'd be able to compile the 6 Dan and 7 Dan Heaven's Path Soul Art manuals using the books he had gathered from the library? With these 2 books, he would be able to advance his soul cultivation to Perfect Harmonization Realm, thus enhancing his fighting prowess significantly. Even though the advancement of his soul cultivation wouldn't be able to resolve the threat concerning the innate fetal poison, it would at least help to suppress the innate fetal poison a bit. It seems like it's already morning. Time for me to return. By the time Zhongxian was done, the brilliant radiance of the sun rays was already spilling in from the eastern horizon of the skyline. It was dawn. Chapter 770, 6-star terpsichore. One of the reasons Zhongxian was able to slip into the terpsichore school in the first place was due to the concealment of the night. Even with his aura hidden by utilizing the unique nature of his Heaven's Path Shinchi, there was a huge chance that someone might spot him if he were to attempt to sneak off in the day. If he didn't leave right now, he would be stuck in the library once the crowd starts spilling into the school. Thus, without any hesitation, Zhongxian's soul rushed to the first floor of the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion, heading for the doors. The student whom he entered with was still busily looking through the shelves. However, judging from the deep frown on her forehead, it seemed she hadn't found the book she was seeking yet. Zhongxian didn't know what she needed, so he couldn't help her even if he wanted to. Thus, he headed straight for the main door. Zhongxian walked up to the door and tried to open it, but to his alarm, it wouldn't budge. In order to prevent any unauthorized personnel from entering the premises, a special mechanism was installed to ensure that the doors wouldn't open without the presence of a student token and academic credit token. Unless one possessed strength beyond the level of a half-saint, it would be impossible to open. Zhongxian was only able to get in earlier by following the student in front of him. As long as no one tried to enter or leave the library, he would be trapped within. What do I do now? Zhongxian thought frustratedly. It was still dawn, so there were still very few people in the terpsichore school at the moment. If he were to delay it any longer, he might very well be found. For an unaffiliated individual to be snooping around the terpsichore school in the early morning, there was no way he could explain that. But if it wasn't opened, the formations and mechanisms constructed around the terpsichore compendium pavilion were more than sufficient to prevent a soul like him from leaving even if they weren't able to perceive him. Zhongxian turned to look at the student in the library worriedly, but the latter didn't seem like she was about to leave anytime soon. Sighing deeply, he could only continue to wait patiently. Forget it, there's no use worrying over this. I should just make use of this time to study the Heaven's Path terpsichorean art. Since there was nothing he could do in this situation, he decided to find a quiet spot in the library and immerse his consciousness in the Library of Heaven's Path to read through the terpsichorean books he had just compiled. He had a full compilation of Heaven's Path terpsichorean art from 1-star to 6-star, and detailed within them were the cultivation techniques for the various terpsichorean arts. Since he couldn't do anything else at the moment, he flipped open the 1-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art and began browsing through it seriously. With the new upgrade of his Library of Heaven's Path, he could take in the content of a book just by flipping open the book, thus allowing him to understand and assimilate the essence of it even faster than before. To become a terpsichore, one must have a powerful soul and a dance that is nearly aligned with nature in order to draw it out. The purpose of dancing is to enhance the strength of the soul to the utmost limit, thus drawing out its full might. The knowledge regarding terpsichores flowed through his head. Before long, Zhongxian's eyes lit up. He had fully assimilated the knowledge regarding the 1-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art. In other words, even if he were to take the examination at this very instant, he would be able to clear the 1-star terpsichore examination easily. The prowess of a terpsichore was highly dependent on their soul, and Zhongxian had cultivated his soul to be beyond 10 meters large. The level that others could hardly reach in their life, he could achieve it as easily as merely eating or drinking. Drawing his consciousness out of the Library of Heaven's Path, Zhongxian noted that the student was still busy looking for her book and had no intentions of leaving yet. Thus, he moved on to study the 2-star Heaven's Path terpsichorean art. While martial artists wield their battle techniques, and terpsichores wield their terpsichorean arts. Terpsichores essentially aim to utilize their art form as a weapon for murder. The world trembles beneath a dance, and in the next moment, a soul perishes. The dance serves as a medium for terpsichores to engage in soul attacks. Reading the content in the book, Zhongxian couldn't help but nod in agreement. Terpsichorean arts, just like the soul techniques of soul oracles and the impartation of heaven's will, were offensive techniques for dealing with souls. But different from the others, terpsichores utilized their dance as a medium to amplify the effectiveness of their offense. Since it serves as a medium, does it mean that, once one reaches the very peak, one will be able to engage in powerful soul attacks even without using the dance as a medium? As Zhongxian continued to read on, a certain line appeared before him. Engage in powerful soul attacks even without using the dance as a medium? Does that mean the swordless realm? Zhongxian thought in agitation. He might not know much about terpsichorean arts yet, but he did have some mastery in the field of swordsmanship. Based on what he knew, if one were to cultivate their swordsmanship to the peak, they would be able to utilize even a blade of grass or a pebble by the roadside as a sword. Going further, they might even be able to execute the full prowess of a sword art without a weapon in hand. That was to say, The sword only served as a medium in order to execute the techniques. Even without a sword in hand, one could still execute a sword art, perhaps even more fluidly, completely, and agilely. What Zhongxian was reading was very unlike the knowledge imparted in the conventional books that terpsichores read. His road of cultivation was directed toward the ultimate endpoint, for the swordless to surpass any sword, for the formless to surpass any form. Reading on. Terpsichorean arts aim to utilize movements as a medium to engage in soul attacks. In essence, even walking and the slightest gestures could be considered as movements, so they could, as well, be considered as terpsichorean arts. A true terpsichore dances not with a routine set of movements but with even the most casual of gestures. Before long, Zhongxian was done browsing through the book. He closed eyes to slowly savor and comprehend the knowledge he had just taken in. Jeji, Jeji. Crisp echoes sounded from his soul as a new world unfolded around him. 2-star terpsichore, reached. Continue. The more Zhongxian studied, the more excited he became. Thus, he went on to finish the remaining books as well. 4 hours later, he was done browsing through all of the books and assimilating their knowledge. As if his massive soul had been tempered, it looked much more transparent and purer. Terpsichores utilize their dance as a means to beguile, enchant, attack, or even kill the soul of another. Even though Zhongxian had never learnt terpsichorean arts before, he had comprehended the most profound and innate essence of the occupation. Currently, his knowledge regarding the occupation was unmatched by anyone beneath 7-star. If he were to take the examination at this very moment, he would definitely qualify for 6-star pinnacle. I finished the books much faster than I would have before, Zhongxian thought. In the past, it would have taken him at least 12 hours in order to learn another occupation from scratch to 6-star pinnacle. However, he did it with terpsichore using only 6 hours. Where is that student? Standing up, Zhongxian glanced around the room to search for the female student who was in the library with him, and he suddenly froze. The vast terpsichore compendium pavilion was empty, and not a single person was in sight. The heck? When did she leave? Widening his eyes in shock, Zhongxian nearly fainted. He had been too immersed in his cultivation that he hadn't noticed that the student whom he had followed in had already left. As the terpsichore compendium pavilion required academic credits to enter, there was rarely anyone in it. From his arrival last night until now, this student was the only one who had entered the premises. Now that she was gone, how was he supposed to leave the area? Was he going to be locked in there for several days straight? Zhongxian felt a tinge of helplessness. What the heck was this? If only he'd known, he wouldn't have immersed himself so deeply into his cultivation. It's nothing much for me to be confined here, but my body is still in the vicinity. If someone were to find it, I will be in deep trouble. As a soul, he was highly indiscernible and was unaffected by the mechanisms and formations governing the terpsichore compendium pavilion, so being trapped here wasn't too much of an issue for him. The problem was his body. Even though he had hidden it in the best spot he could find, it would be a stretch to say that it would be able to hide from the discerning eyes of the many master teachers of the terpsichore school for extended periods of time, especially in the day. It would be a calamity if he were to be found by anyone. Seeing that it was already nearing noon, Zhongxian could no longer hold himself back any longer. He rushed up to the door, hoping to find a gap or any other openings which he could escape through. However, after circling around the entire terpsichore compendium pavilion, he could only sigh deeply in frustration. Looks like there really is no way for me to escape. The mechanisms and formations set up in the terpsichore compendium pavilion were extremely powerful, and it was impossible for anyone to force them open. If Zhongxian's physical body was there, he could have compiled a book on them just by touching them, and exploiting its flaws, he would have been able to escape easily. Incapable of touch, however, his soul was unable to do so. His eye of insight was currently too weak to see through the formation and mechanisms as well. Was he doomed to continue waiting helplessly here until someone arrived? Zhongxian's eyes twitched as helplessness washed over him. Forget it, I will just continue to wait. Surely there will be someone who will visit the terpsichore compendium pavilion by the end of the day. Since Zhongxian was unable to find a better solution to his dilemma, he could only resign himself to fate. Just as he was about to find a place to bide his time, the doors suddenly creaked open. Someone is here. Not expecting that someone would arrive that quickly, Zhongxian leaped up in excitement. He hurriedly rushed behind the doors to hide as he waited for an opportunity to rush out of the library. Who? A resplendently dressed lady carrying a graceful disposition walked into the room. After stepping across the threshold, she was just about to walk toward the shelves when her eyebrows suddenly knitted together. She glanced at the direction where Zhongxian was hidden and howled, "Who is it? Come out." Sensing her gaze on him, Zhongxian's body stiffened in tension. It should have been hard for anyone to notice him in his soul form, especially since he was lying dormant in the corner. Yet, the other party had actually noticed him instantly. How could that be? A Saint Realm expert? Zhongxian's eyes narrowed warily. There was only one possibility for this: the other party was a Saint Realm expert. With the breakthrough to Saint Realm, one would gain a certain level of comprehension regarding the nature of space. Even though Zhongxian had concealed his presence well, his disguise was not perfect due to the limitations of his cultivation. For one, the flow of spiritual energy where he was standing would be slightly disturbed due to the presence of his soul, thus betraying his presence. "What? You aren't going to come out?" Frowning deeply, the lady harumphed coldly as she raised her palm and grabbed toward the space where Zhongxian was situated. Hong Long. A sudden burst of zhenqi abruptly froze everything in place. Zhongxian felt an immense pressure strangling him, threatening to dissipate his soul. As big as his soul was, it only possessed the cultivation of transcendent mortal 5-dan pinnacle. That was far from matching up to a Saint Realm expert. They were two completely different levels. Escape. Knowing that he would die if he were to allow the other party to do as he pleased, he immediately drove his cultivation, and with a powerful burst of strength, he managed to barely break free of the other party's restraint. Without any hesitation whatsoever, he rushed right for the doors. Hong Long. The movement of his immense soul disturbed the spiritual energy in the surroundings, stirring up a burst of wind in the surroundings. "This is a soul?" The lady's face turned grim. While she did sense a presence in the room, she'd only thought that it was someone who had used some kind of technique or ability to conceal their presence. She'd never even considered the possibility that it would be a soul. Soul oracles had already vanished several dozen millenniums ago. For one to suddenly appear in the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion, where could he have come from? And what was he up to? "Where do you think you are going?" With a sharp shout, the lady darted forward to grab the escaping soul. Hong Long. With a Saint Realm expert exerting her full might, the space within several thousand meters was immediately sealed in place. This is truly bad. After barely darting out of the library, Zhongxian was just about to escape into the air when the area around him suddenly turned incredibly viscous. It was as if he had fallen in a marsh. As much as he tried, he just wouldn't move. Is this the ability of Saint Realm experts, zhenqi spatial lock? Zhongxian stiffened tensely. Chapter 771. The foolish deeds of the body. Saint Realm experts possessed the ability to seal space, leaving those who were within the area of its effect feeling as if they had fallen into an ocean of mud. Limited by the spatial lockdown, they would only be able to utilize a tenth of their original movement speed and strength. This ability was known as zhenqi spatial lock, and only Saint Realm experts were able to overcome it. With an awful look on his face, Zhongxian gritted his teeth and continued trudging forth. However, with his speed being reduced to a tenth under the effects of the zhenqi spatial lock, his speed was barely any different from that of a snail. "Trying to escape me? Dream on." With a light harumph, the lady flicked her fingers thrice toward Zhongxian. Peng peng peng. A powerful shockwave engulfed the area around Zhongxian, and he immediately felt a stifling sensation in his chest. His massive soul trembled uncontrollably as a splitting headache assaulted his consciousness. It felt as if he was going to lose control of his body at any moment. A soul attack. Zhongxian thought with a grave expression. With 3 simple flicks, the lady was able to inflict grievous injuries upon Zhongxian's soul. Considering her skillful use of the soul attack, She must be one of the upper echelons governing the Terpsichore school, perhaps an elder or even higher. I must return to my body this very instant, or else I might really end up being killed by her. A chilling sensation swept over Zhongxian as he realized the dire situation he was in. If it had been any other Saint Realm expert he was dealing with, and this was inclusive of the 10 great master teachers such as School Head Mo and School Head Zhao, it would have been difficult for the other party to wound his soul. Due to the soul's intangibility, it couldn't be hurt by physical means. Only those who wielded soul offense techniques could possibly inflict damage upon a soul. To Zhongxian's misfortune, the person he was facing was an upper echelon of the Terpsichore school, which meant that she had a thorough understanding of souls. To such a person, erasing his soul from existence was no difficult feat. If his soul were to dissipate, that would be complete and utter death. There would be zero possibility that he could come back to life. There was no way he could survive the attacks of a Saint Realm Terpsichore as a soul, so the only chance he had at surviving this ordeal was to return back to his physical body. This would reveal the location of his body, but he had no other option at the moment. After all, this was a much better alternative than having his soul dissipated on the spot. Bearing the excruciating pain his soul was in, he rushed right for the tree at the courtyard, where his body was located. However, before he could get far, he heard yet another harumph beneath him. "You still wish to continue on? Voila." The lady raised her palm and thrusted it at the air several times. An overwhelming force tore through space and struck Zhongxian. For an instant, Zhongxian felt as if he had been struck by a comet, and his soul flipped several times in the air, nearly ripped apart by the sheer force of the attack. It was fortunate that his large soul had allowed him to distribute the immense force across his soul body, thus reducing the severity of the damage he sustained. At the same time, as a cultivator of the Heaven's Path soul art, his soul energy was particularly pure, granting exceptional resilience to his soul. Otherwise, he would surely have been killed under the blow. But even though he had managed to survive the attack, he still felt as if someone had attempted to tear his soul into two, and the wounds on his soul had worsened as well. Knowing that he would surely die without fail if the other party were to continue attacking, Zhongxian intended to make another charge for his body behind the tree when an idea popped into his mind, and he held himself still. The might of the other party's attack was more than sufficient to kill any ordinary soul oracle. It was only due to the immense size and exceptional resilience of his soul that he was able to remain intact. If he were to attempt another charge for his body, the other party would surely sense his presence and be astounded by the durability of his soul. In response to that, she would execute an even stronger attack against him. If this were to happen, regardless of how big or resilient his soul was, the only fate awaiting him was death. But, if he could make the other party think that she had managed to kill him, he just might be able to escape with his life. As expected, when he paused in the air and manipulated his soul to emulate a dissipated soul, the lady looked visibly relieved. Sensing the lack of movement in the air, the lady suddenly recalled something, and her face darkened. Soul oracles betrayed humanity back then, opting to become a weapon for the otherworldly demons. For one of them to appear here at this moment, could it be related to that incident? If that's the case, I shouldn't have killed it immediately. Countless years ago, the soul oracles and their heritage were wiped clean from the face of the earth by the Master Teacher Pavilion. If anything related to them was still existent in the world, the chances were that the otherworldly demons were involved in the matter as well. For a soul oracle to appear right after the incident at Leiyuan Peak, no matter how she looked at the matter, it was impossible for the two incidents to be unrelated. Realizing that she had allowed a potential clue leading her to Byzantium Aelio's beast slip through her fingers, she couldn't help but regret her impulsive actions. At this instant, the lady suddenly recalled something. Wait, if that person is a soul oracle, why would he try to escape from the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion at this time? But if he isn't a soul oracle, what else can he be? Soul oracles were of the yin attribute, which made them highly vulnerable to yang energy. As a result, they dared not appear in broad daylight, or else they would be putting themselves at risk of being seared by the sun rays. Even if they managed to survive the exposure to the sun rays, they would be in for a round of excruciating pain and a sharp decline in their cultivation afterwards due to the searing yang decline. Considering how that the other party had rushed out as soon as he found an opportunity to do so, he clearly did not fear the sun. Could that mean that he wasn't a soul oracle? But if that was the case, what else could he be? As a Saint Realm expert, she knew that the world was far larger than she could ever imagine. There were many unique occupations with mystical means that ordinary cultivators could hardly fathom. Even with her broad knowledge base, she dared not outright refute the possibility of anything. For example, she had heard of a species of saint beast known as the weak-scaled beast. It was a massive beast with an exterior as dark as ink, making it a conspicuous existence no matter where it went. However, as soon as it stepped into water, its body would immediately turn completely transparent, as if it was invisible. Could the fellow she had just encountered be such a life form as well? This was a plausible hypothesis as well. Otherwise, no matter how powerful a soul oracle was, a human soul couldn't possibly expand to be beyond 10 meters large, right? That would be sheer insanity. Upon that realization, the lady's eyes suddenly widened in astonishment. Damn it, that would mean that fellow is feigning death. If her enemy was truly a soul oracle, there was little doubt that her soul attack would have ripped the other party apart. However, if her enemy was a saint beast instead, it would be likely that it would possess thick and tough skin that granted it superior defenses. If so, it was unlikely that her soul attack would have been able to kill the other party. In other words, there was a good chance that the other party was feigning death. Trying to fool me? Don't even think about it. With a livid expression, the lady raised her leg and stomped forcefully on the ground. Hong long. The earth immediately shook intensely as waves of zhenqi surged into the surroundings as if searing heat waves. She noticed it. For a moment, Zhong Xian had thought that he'd managed to fool the other party. However, upon hearing those words, he realized that his deception had failed. Left with no choice, he was just about to attempt another dash for his physical body when one of the branches of a certain tree abruptly shook. Putong. A corpse-like figure suddenly fell face down from the tree, creating a huge depression on the ground. Upon seeing the sight, Zhong Xian nearly fainted from utter horror. Who else could that figure be if not his body? He'd thought it would be safe to hide his body amidst the trees, but that lady's attack had caused the trees to sway, resulting in his body falling from its hiding spot. It was just a few moments ago that he was still thinking that even though his soul had been discovered, as long as his body remained hidden, he would still be safe. After all, considering the fact that souls were intangible, it was impossible to see their true form without the eye of insight. Thus, as long as his soul could flee for the time being, returning only after the storm had cleared to fetch his body, he would be able to get away scot-free. However, with his body face-planted in the ground right before the other party, his identity was already compromised. There was no way he would be able to remain in the Master Teacher Academy anymore. Who are you? While Zhong Xian was feeling so frustrated that he could spew blood, the lady howled in astonishment and immediately raised her palm to strike the fallen body. Hong long. A violent torrent of zhenqi that harnessing destructive might fell upon Zhong Xian. Now that her attention is away from me, I should make use of this opportunity to return back to my body. Knowing that this was the only chance he was going to get, Zhong Xian gritted his teeth and immediately rushed for his body. But at that moment, his face-planted body abruptly placed its palms against the ground to push itself up before flitting away swiftly. Its speed was so fast that its movements were a blur. Heaven's Path movement art. This is Mind of Void. Upon seeing the sight before him, Zhong Xian's soul swayed weakly. If souls could faint, he would probably have fainted there and then. Having comprehended Mind of Void, his body could move instinctively in times of danger even if its soul was not in it. Realizing the immense might behind the other party's palm, his body gauged that it wasn't the other party's match, so it immediately fled so as to avert the danger. Looking at the distant back of his body, Zhong Xian nearly burst into tears. The heck? If you had just waited a split second longer, I would have already freaking returned back to my body. Think of what an awkward situation you have left me in. Furthermore, with the speed you are fleeing at via the Heaven's Path movement art, how am I to catch up with you? Zhong Xian's soul was only at consonant spirit realm pinnacle, whereas his body possessed the cultivation of cosmos bridge realm pinnacle. Pair that with the Heaven's Path movement art and red dust heaven ascending steps. If his body were to flee with all its might, the distance between them would only grow further and further. Screw this. You scoundrel, where do you think you are running off to? Seeing the young man who had fallen from the tree running away, the lady nearly exploded from fury. Pushing against the ground, she soared into the sky and pursued the fleeing figure. With the incredible speed Zhongxian's body was traveling at via the Heaven's Path movement art, even the lady had to dash with all her might in order to keep up with him. Hurry up and catch him. Seeing the lady rushing for his body, Zhongxian heaved a sigh of relief. The next moment, however, a bizarre expression appeared on its face as what he had just asked for dawned on him. The hell? To be cheering when another was attempting to capture his body. There was just some kind of inexplicable peculiarity to the situation. This was all that foolish body's fault. If not for it, why would he be in such a dilemma now? Wait a moment. If my body is caught, it will be even more difficult for me to slip back into it. After a moment of depression, Zhongxian suddenly realized that even if his body were to be caught, the lady would never allow his soul to slip into his body. Thus, he immediately rushed off to chase his body as well. However, the next sight he saw left him dumbfounded. His body was crashing through wall after wall as it fled with all its might. Calm down, stop doing that. Zhongxian bellowed within as he watched the sight before him with an aching heart. All actions conducted under the effects of Mind of Void was instinctive, so it was impossible for it to conduct precise movements like a living human. Even so, to be crashing straight through walls, that was a little over the top. You are supposed to save me from danger, not to leave my body bruised all over. Even if you get out of this situation alive, if you leave my body mortally wounded in exchange, what good will you have done? You better stop right there. Just as Zhongxian was wallowing in self-pity at his unfortunate plight, the lady ahead of him caught up to his body. With a flick of her hand, several surges of zhenqi gathered and sealed the space around his body, forming an invisible cage around it. Peng! 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 Sensing the immense threat looming over it, his body executed the Heaven's Path fist art in an attempt to break open the cage. However, with just a total might of 16 million ding from his zhenqi cultivation and physical body, it was impossible for him to break the zhenqi cage constructed by a Saint Realm expert. Knowing that the other party wouldn't be able to break free of her zhenqi spatial lock, the lady turned to the figure before her and asked with a sharp glint in her eyes, "Who are you? Why were you snooping around the Terpsichore Compendium Pavilion?" Peng 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 peng. Naturally, Zhongxian's body, driven only by its instincts, was unable to answer the question. It continued striking the cage frenziedly, creating loud sonic booms. You are courting death. Seeing that the other party actually dared to snub her, the lady's face flushed crimson in rage. She raised her hand, and a destructive force swiftly gathered on her palm. From the looks of it, if the figure before her continued to remain silent, she would simply kill him. Mind of Void was an ability that only the most powerful soul oracles possessed. However, with the disappearance of the soul oracles and their heritage, the knowledge regarding Mind of Void had vanished as well. This was the reason, despite being a saint and a 6-star pinnacle master teacher, the lady was unable to tell that the figure standing before her was just a soulless body incapable of speech. If my body is smashed into minced meat, it will be of no use even if I do get it back. At this moment, Zhongxian finally arrived at the scene. Seeing that the lady preparing her hand to smash his body into pieces, his soul nearly dissipated from fright. Not daring to waste a single second, he immediately dived straight through the cage and into the glabella of his body. Unlike the zhenqi spatial lock, the zhenqi cage didn't harness the spatial laws of the world and could only block physical beings. It couldn't interfere in the passageway of a soul at all. As soon as his soul entered his body, he immediately saw immense energy gathered on the lady's palm that was on the verge of landing on him, so he hurriedly had his body stop whatever he was doing. Clasping his fist, he spoke resoundingly, "Elder, thank you for helping me suppress my inner demons, sparing me from the fate of going berserk. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.